Chapter 664. Adopt him as a son? Yi Xian was dumbfounded. What kind of operation was this? Shangguan Xian had a strange expression on her face. Adopt Yi Xian as a son? Was he trying to persuade Yi Xian to surrender? In front of Yi Xian, the old man smiled slightly. Don't think that he's looking down on you. On the contrary, the Northern Region King thinks highly of you. That's why he wants to adopt you. You probably don't know what it means to be the Northern Region King's adopted son. As he spoke, he walked not far from Yi Xian and said, as the Northern Region King's adopted son, in the northern territory of the Black-Yellow Great World, not only will you have a noble status, but you will also have real power. It can be said that you are truly second only to the Northern Region King. Not only that, as long as you become the Northern Region King's adopted son, you will have wealth and peerless beauties at your fingertips. Yi Xian said seriously, do I look like a greedy person? The old man looked at Yi Xian and said with a smile, isn't it normal for young people to be greedy for money? In my Black-Yellow Great World, there are many beauties. As long as you become the Northern Region King's adopted son, you will have countless peerless beauties at your disposal. Shangguan Xian looked at Yi Xian, her expression becoming more and more strange. Yi Xian's expression also became somewhat ugly. He admitted that he was greedy for money. After all, he was once a poor person. But the problem was, how could he describe this greed? Was he greedy? He was very pure. At this time the old man said again, Yi Xian, I have to say that the strength of your chaotic universe is indeed not bad. However, if you had seen my Black-Yellow Great World, you would not have any thoughts of resisting. And now, the Northern Region King has taken a liking to you and wants to adopt you as his son. This is a great blessing for you. You must cherish this opportunity. Yi Xian looked at the old man and said with a smile, if my guess is correct, in return, I should offer you that fifth-dimensional treasure. Not only that, but I should also offer you the entire chaotic universe, right? The elder looked at Yi Xian. You are a smart person. Yi Xian patted his thigh and smiled. I don't have the habit of kneeling. The old man looked at Yi Xian. After a moment, he smiled. I understand. With that, he turned around and left. Before long, the old man disappeared into the boundless horizon. In the same place, Yi Xian said softly, looks like they're serious. Shangguan Xian nodded. She looked at Yi Xian. We are far weaker than the forces of the Xianhuang realm, but they won't send all their experts to the Chaosverse. When she spoke up to hear, she paused for a moment and said, what do you plan to do? Plan? Yi Xian said softly, what else can we do? We can't just surrender, right? Given the way the Xianhuang Great World operated, even if the Chaosverse surrendered, it wouldn't meet a good end. Shangguan Xian nodded. I know a lot of things about the Divine Kingdom. If you need anything, you can come to me. Yi Xian nodded. Help me find 2 people. Shangguan Xian asked. Who? Yi Xian waved his right hand and 2 portraits appeared in front of Shangguan Xian. Shangguan Xian took a look and nodded. Sure. Yi Xian hesitated and said, there's one more person. With that, he waved his right hand and a portrait appeared in front of Shangguan Xian. Shangguan Xian took a look and nodded. Understood. With that, she left quietly. After Shangguan Xian left, Yi Xian returned to the Shenwu city. As soon as he arrived at the gate of the Shenwu city, Yi Xian was stunned. There was a woman standing at the gate. He knew this person. It was Zhao Mu who had disappeared for a long time. And now, Zhao Mu had also reached the Emperor realm. Zhao Mu looked at Yi Xian and did not speak. Yi Xian walked in front of Zhao Mu and smiled. Miss Zhao, long time no see. I missed you. Zhao Mu suddenly punched the ground. Boom. The ground exploded. Yi Xian's eyelids twitched. What was the meaning of this? Zhao Mu took a look at Yi Xian and left. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment before he followed her. Soon, Yi Xian followed Zhao Mu to the peak of a mountain. In front of a wooden house, he saw the Southern Sect Martial Master. But at this moment, the Southern Sect Martial Master's face was not good. Yi Xian frowned. Senior Yu? The Southern Sect Martial Master smiled. Little friend Yi, long time no see. Yi Xian said in a deep voice. Senior Yu? The Southern Sect Martial Master said softly, my time is up. My time is up. Yi Xian said in a deep voice. What do you mean? The southern sect martial master smiled. Failed to reach the god realm. Yi Xian was stunned, then said. How is that possible? Senior? The southern sect martial master said softly. To reach the god realm, I need too much tendo source. I thought I didn't need this tendo source, but... Saying this, the smile on his face became bitter. Even the cleverest housewife can't cook without rice. Saying this, he looked at Yi Xian. This time, I asked you to come because I have a favor to ask of you. Zhao Mu, that lass. She couldn't speak for some reason since she was young. Plus, she rarely goes out. Yi Xian suddenly said. Senior, please wait. Saying this, he took out a white jade bottle and handed it to the southern sect martial master. This bottle of medicine is for healing. Please take it first. The southern sect martial master shook his head. No. Yi Xian said in a deep voice. Senior, try it first. The southern sect warrior glanced at Yi Xian, then took the white jade bottle. He took a look at the white jade bottle, then swallowed an elixir. Soon, a wave of pure energy emanated from his body. The southern sect martial master's eyes flashed with shock. He looked at Yi Xian. This is... Yi Xian said with a smile. I robbed it from the black-yellow great world. Saying this, he flicked his finger, and a thumb-sized pill landed in front of the southern sect martial master. This pill seems to be called a divine pill, specially used to reach the emperor realm. Senior, you can try it. The southern sect martial master hesitated, then shook his head. Too precious. Saying this, he returned the emperor pill to Yi Xian. Yi Xian said with a smile. Senior, back at the Great Wall, only you spoke for me. I have always remembered this favor. As for this pill, it is just a small token of my appreciation. Please don't refuse it, Senior. The southern sect martial master looked at Yi Xian with a complicated expression. A moment later, the southern sect martial master swallowed the emperor pill and began to break through to the emperor realm. Yi Xian and Zhao Mu stood guard on the other side. Yi Xian looked at Zhao Mu, then waved his right hand, and dozens of Dao realm treasures landed in front of Zhao Mu. Zhao Mu looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian said with a smile, choose one. Zhao Mu shook his head. Yi Xian said, choose one to defend yourself. Dao realm treasures were still very important. In this world, strength wasn't the only thing that mattered. Equipment was also important. Zhao Mu still didn't choose. Yi Xian chose one and handed it to Zhao Mu. Then he took out 3 white jade bottles and a storage ring and handed them to Zhao Mu. Among these 3 white jade bottles, some are for healing, and some are for stabilizing your level. They are all suitable for you. There are 100 million divine crystals in this storage ring. Use them first. If it's not enough, come find me. Finished speaking, he put down the white jade bottles and storage ring, then turned and left. Behind Yi Xian, Zhao Mu looked at the white jade bottles and storage ring for a long time, not saying a word. After Yi Xian returned to Shenwu City, he found Enlancio. Her injuries were almost healed. Inside the room, Enlancio looked at Yi Xian. They will come again, right? Yi Xian nodded. Enlancio said, what plan? Yi Xian said with a smile, what else can we do? We can only fight them. Enlancio said, there is a great disparity in strength. Yi Xian said, there is no other way, the black-yellow great world is too strong. Even if we surrender, we won't have a good ending, we can only fight. Enlancio nodded, as if thinking of something. She asked, what about Little Seven? Little Seven. Yi Xian's face gradually sank. There might be other forces in the dark. At this point he looked at Enlancio. I'll call for help too. Call for help. Enlancio looked at Yi Xian. Who? Yi Xian said with a smile. You'll know when the time comes. After chatting with Enlancio for a while, Yi Xian returned to the Order City. In the room, Yi Xian sat cross-legged on the ground. In front of him were 5 Dao Realm swords. His greatest trump cards were the World Prison Pagoda and the Infinite Sword. The lethality of the Infinite Sword was too strong. It could directly disregard any realm. Moreover, after killing someone, he could automatically enter the realm of emptiness. Simply put, his sword technique was suitable for assassination and escape. His greatest weakness now was that his realm wasn't enough. He had to increase his realm. Yi Xian picked up a Dao Realm sword and stabbed it into his abdomen. Absorb. Yi Xian's entire face revealed an intoxicated expression. It was too comfortable. The energy of this Tao Realm sword was much purer than the Fate Realm sword. These 5 Tao Realm swords could completely increase his realm by another level. While Yi Xian was cultivating, more and more experts returned to the God Nation. These were all summoned back by Little Seven in the name of the God Master. One must know that there were many experts in the God race, many of whom were outside, and now, these experts were rushing back to the God Nation. These experts had a strong sense of belonging to the God Nation. In the vast starry sky, a huge starship slowly flew by. This starship was nearly 10,000 feet long and several thousand feet wide. Above the starship, there was a rock demonic beast. The rock's body was even bigger than the starship. It was simply covering the sky. On the head of the rock stood a middle-aged man. This person was the marshal of the northern region, Lian Xiaotian. He controlled almost 80% of the northern region's army. In the northern region, he was truly below 1 and above tens of thousands. Behind Lian Xiaotian stood 2 old men and a man. This man was Feng Yi. The middle-aged man in the lead said softly, "Is that sword of his really that strong?" Feng Yi nodded slightly. "Very strong." Thinking of Yi Xian's sword back then, he still had lingering fear. That sword, he could not block it at all. The middle-aged man smiled slightly. "This is getting interesting." With that said, he looked into the distance and said softly, "I never thought that this chaotic universe would have such hidden talents." Feng Yi bowed slightly. "This subordinate is useless." Lian Xiaotian shook his head. "It was us who underestimated the chaotic universe." With that said, he slowly clenched his right hand. 5th dimensional treasure. "By the way, I heard that there is a swordsman expert behind him?" Feng Yi nodded. "It is said that it is a female swordsman." Lian Xiaotian smiled slightly. "I hope she is not too weak." His words were filled with invincible confidence. Chapter 665. Temple. Yi Xian, who was sitting cross-legged on the ground, suddenly opened his eyes. 2 rays of sword light flashed in his eyes. At the same time, his body exuded a gloomy aura. Yin Realm. Above the Origin Realm was the Yin Realm, and above the Yin Realm was the Supreme Realm. After reaching the Yin Realm, his divine sense, spiritual force, and spiritual force were suddenly a lot stronger. It could be said that he didn't lack treasures and his body was strong enough, but his realm was weak. Of course, after he started cultivating in adversity, he also gained a lot of benefits. He imagined that when he reached the Emperor Realm, his strength would definitely far surpass the Emperor Realm experts. Although he could kill Emperor Realm experts with his current strength, he still needed some external help. Moreover, because his realm was not high enough, his spiritual force and spiritual force were still a bit weak. Yi Xian stood up, took a deep breath, and walked out of the hall. At the entrance of the hall, Shangguan Xian had been waiting for a long time. Yi Xian looked at Shangguan Xian and she whispered, "Did you break through?" Yi Xian nodded. Shangguan Xian smiled. "Congratulations." Yi Xian smiled. "Is there something?" Shangguan Xian nodded. "We have investigated the female assassin you asked the Celestial Arcanum sect to find." Yi Xian asked, "Who?" Shangguan Xian said, "She is from the Black-Yellow Great World, but she is not in the same group as the Northern Region King." Yi Xian frowned. "You mean there are many factions in the Black-Yellow Great World?" Shangguan Xian nodded. "Yes. However, we don't know which factions they are, but our people have already gone to investigate, and we should have news soon. As for the female assassin, she should be from an assassin organization in the Black-Yellow Great World called Heaven Gate." Heaven Gate? Yi Xian asked. "It's an assassin organization." Shangguan Xian nodded. "It's a very powerful organization, just like our secret guards. The people in the Elysium are extremely good at assassination. If I'm not wrong, they should have their eyes on you. Not only that, but we also received news that everyone in the Black-Yellow Great World should know that you have a 5th-dimensional treasure, so..." At this point, she glanced at Yi Xian and didn't say anything. Yi Xian smiled and said, "So, there will definitely be many people looking for me in the future, right?" Shangguan Xian nodded. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. Shangguan Xian said solemnly, "Aren't you afraid?" Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, "Actually, I'm a little panicked." At this point, he opened his palm and the World Prison Pagoda appeared in his hand. Looking at the World Prison Pagoda in his hand, Yi Xian said softly, "Brother, because of you, I'm afraid I won't be able to live in peace for the rest of my life." Can you make it up to me? The prison pagoda trembled, as if in response. Meanwhile, Xiao Ling suddenly said, "It asked you to take it back, and it'll compensate you." Go back. The corners of Yi Xian's eyes twitched. This guy wants to return to the fifth dimension. Yi Xian hesitated and said, "Brother Pagoda, do you have any helpers you can call? For example, powerhouses from the fifth dimension, you can call 2 of them." The World Prison Pagoda suddenly jumped with excitement. Yi Xian hurriedly asked, "Xiao Ling, what is it saying?" Xiao Ling said, "It wants you to call the sister in the plain dress. The woman in the plain dress." Yi Xian's expression froze. This guy is actually thinking of the woman in the plain dress. Not to mention, he really missed the woman in the plain dress a little. He had made an agreement with the other party to meet again in the clouds. And now, he didn't know how the other party was. Yi Xian put away Xiao Ta, then looked at Shangguanxian regarding the mysterious yellow great world, what is the attitude of the forces in Scandinavia? Shangguanxian said in a low voice, "What do you want to say?" Yi Xian said, "You know what I mean." Shangguanxian said, "Don't worry, they will not have any disloyalty, at least before we die, they will not have any disloyalty." Yi Xian nodded. "Then that's good." At this moment, a black-clothed man suddenly appeared behind Shangguanxian. The black-clothed man bowed slightly. "Shangguan Kingdom Scholar, they are here." "They are here." Shangguanxian's eyes narrowed slightly. "So fast?" The black-clothed man nodded slightly. "They will arrive in our chaotic universe tomorrow." Shangguanxian looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian asked, "How many of them are here?" The black-clothed man said in a low voice, "Less than 100. I don't know if there are any hidden ones." "Only 100. Yi Xian and Shangguanxian were silent. Needless to say, these 100 people are definitely not ordinary people. At this time Shangguanxian said, "Give the order." Yi Xian smiled, "Go wait for them outside the chaotic universe." Shangguanxian looked at Yi Xian. "Okay." She understood Yi Xian's meaning. Yi Xian clearly did not want the battlefield to be in the chaotic universe. The chaotic universe could not withstand such a battle between super powerhouses. Yi Xian said, "Gather everyone." Shangguanxian opened her palm, a command sword flew out, and a moment later, a golden dragon suddenly flew over from the horizon. Yi Xian and Shangguanxian came to the golden dragon's back. At this time, several figures appeared in front of Yi Xian. The people who came were Zhou Yafu, Mu Nanji, and the Scandinavian powerhouses. These Scandinavian powerhouses were the strongest group of people in the Scandinavian kingdom. Among them, Yan Dao, Zhang Guandao, and the Scandinavian kingdom martial masters were here. In addition, several star cloud warships also appeared in the sky. These were the most elite soldiers of the Scandinavian kingdom. This time, it could be said that the elites were all here. Yi Xian looked at Mu Nanji and Zhou Yafu. "You can leave." Mu Nanji smiled. "We were born in the chaotic universe. Now that the chaotic universe is facing an apocalypse, how can we just stand by and watch?" Zhou Yafu nodded. "If the people of the Xuanhuan Great World come to our chaotic universe, this world will be plunged into misery and suffering." Yi Xian's heart was filled with complex emotions. Someone had once told him that many times, the more powerful a person was, the more selfish they were. Reality proved that there were no absolutes in this world. At this time, Tendo appeared not too far away from Yi Xian. She glanced at Yi Xian, not saying a word. Yi Xian looked at the distant Scandinavian soldiers. "Do you know what this trip means?" All of the Scandinavian soldiers looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian smiled. "On this trip, either they die, or we die. We have no path of retreat, and we cannot retreat. We will not rest until we die. We will not rest until we die." The Scandinavian soldiers roared in unison. "Imposing manner." Yi Xian smiled. He had to admit that these Scandinavian soldiers were really not bad. They were very courageous. And now, they were about to welcome the strongest enemy of their lives. An expert from the Xuanhuan Great World. Yi Xian gathered his thoughts and lightly stomped his right foot. "Let's go." As soon as he finished speaking, the golden dragon beneath his feet suddenly let out a roar and was about to fly off. But at this moment, a man and 2 women suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. They were in Lanxiu, Lian Wanli, and Mo Xie. Yi Xian smiled. I was going to inform you. Lien Wanli said indifferently. Is that so? Yi Xian was about to speak when another woman appeared in front of him. It was Zhao Mu. And not far behind Zhao Mu was the Southern Sect Martial Master. The Southern Sect Martial Master looked at Yi Xian and smiled. I will naturally do my part. Yi Xian said with a smile. Let's go. As soon as he spoke, the golden dragon soared into the sky, and before long, it vanished at the end of the distant starry sky. The elites of the entire chaotic universe were dispatched. In the depths of the starry sky, Yi Xian stood silently on the golden dragon's head with Shangguan by his side. At this moment, a black-clothed man appeared beside Yi Xian. The black-clothed man bowed slightly to Yi Xian. God Lord, the person who came this time is the Marshal of the Divine Kingdom's northern region, Lian Xiaotian. His strength is unknown, and the 100 people he brought should be the Northern Territory's 100-man regiment. Yi Xian frowned slightly. The 100-man regiment. The black-clothed man nodded. This regiment is one of the Northern Territory's 3 great legions. There are less than 100 people in this regiment, but they are the elites of the elites. Moreover, they cultivate the same cultivation technique and use the same treasures. People call them the enemy of 100, which means they are invincible against 100 people. Invincible against 100 people. Yi Xian nodded slightly. How strong are these 100 people? The black-clothed man shook his head. I don't know. Yi Xian said. How far away are they from us? The black-clothed man said. Half a day's journey. Yi Xian nodded. Scout further. The black-clothed man quietly retreated. On the golden dragon, Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. Shangguan glanced at Yi Xian, but did not disturb him. After a long time, Yi Xian opened his eyes, a bitter smile on his lips. Pressure. At this moment, he realized that although the position of Divine Lord had the power to overturn the world, the pressure was also enormous. Because behind him were countless soldiers and citizens of the Divine Kingdom. If they were defeated, these people would all die. War was cruel, and the people of the Shenhuang Great World would not be merciful to the chaotic universe. Yi Xian looked at the executing heaven sword in his hand. This might be our last battle. The executing heaven sword trembled slightly in response. Yi Xian grinned, then he took out the prison pagoda. Brother Pagoda, I know that even if I die, you will not die. If I die, will you avenge me in the future? The prison pagoda trembled slightly. Xiao Linger said, It's said that if you die, it will go to the Shenhuang Great World and open all the seals. Open all the seals. Yi Xian was stunned, then said, It can open all the seals? After a moment of silence, Xiao Linger said, It's not talking anymore. Yi Xian fell silent. Needless to say, the prison pagoda could definitely open those seals. However, it definitely would not do so. Because the imprisoned existences would definitely hold a great grudge against it. In its current state, opening the 8th and 9th floors would most likely be courting death. Yi Xian collected his thoughts, looked at the pagoda in his hand, smiled. In any case, you must remember that if I die, you must avenge me. Haha. The golden dragon sped up. Half a day later, Yi Xian and the others saw Lian Xiaotian and the others from the Shenhuang Great World. When the rock beneath Lian Xiaotian saw the golden dragon beneath Yi Xian, it immediately became excited, its eyes looking as if it was about to devour someone. But the golden dragon was a little uneasy. Lian Xiaotian looked at Yi Xian. I heard that there is a swordsman in a plain dress behind you. Tell her to come out? Yi Xian shook his head. I don't know where she is. Lian Xiaotian thought for a moment, then said, Xinji, find her. As soon as he finished, an old man walked out from behind him. The old man waved his right hand, and a huge altar appeared in front of him. He looked at Yi Xian. Give me one of her items or her portrait, and I will find her for you. Yi Xian. Chapter 666. They were looking for the woman in a plain dress. Yi Xian fell silent. He hadn't expected that these people would actually be looking for the woman in a plain dress. Yi Xian gazed at Lian Xiaotian. Why are you looking for her? Lian Xiaotian grinned. We like to eliminate weeds by the roots. Do you understand what I mean? Yi Xian instantly came to an understanding. These people didn't just want to kill Yi Xian, they wanted to kill everyone related to Yi Xian as well. But was it easy to kill the woman in a plain dress? Yi Xian suddenly felt like laughing when he thought about killing the woman in a plain dress. He couldn't deny that Lian Xiaotian was very strong. But the problem was that it was the woman in a plain dress. She was an existence that could suppress the entire world prison. After all, the sixth pavilion was so strong, and he was extremely respectful towards the woman in a plain dress. Suddenly, Lian Xiaotian said, "What? You don't dare to let her come out?" Yi Xian gazed at Lian Xiaotian. He thought for a moment, and then he waved his right hand. A portrait appeared not too far away from him. It was the portrait of the woman in a plain dress. Her clothes were pure and untainted by even a speck of dust. Yi Xian gazed at Lian Xiaotian. "Go ahead and look for her." He actually hoped that the members of the Yellow World would help him find the woman in a plain dress. It had been so long, and he really missed her. Lian Xiaotian gazed at the old man called Xueqi. The old man nodded slightly, and then he waved his right hand. The portrait of the woman fell onto the altar. Xueqi said, "I need some time." Lian Xiaotian asked, "How long exactly?" Xueqi said, "It depends on how far away they are. If they're close, then only a moment. If they're far away, then around 2 hours." Lian Xiaotian nodded. "Then we'll wait for now." As he spoke, he gazed at Yi Xian and sized Yi Xian up. "Becoming the foster son of our king is the dream of countless people from the Yellow World. Yet you refused. You'll regret it." Yi Xian chuckled. "I don't have the habit of acknowledging others as my father." Lian Xiaotian smiled. "Perhaps you don't know what sort of fortuitous encounter you've lost." Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, "You're from the northern region. In other words, there's also the southern region and the eastern region?" Lian Xiaotian looked at Yi Xian. "Why? Are you interested in our black-yellow great world?" Yi Xian smiled and said, "I'm just a little curious. I'm curious as to why only people from the north have come. Are the others not interested in that supreme treasure or this chaos verse?" Lian Xiaotian chuckled. "Of course they're interested, but it's us from the northern region who found you first. Moreover, the spatial stronghold here belongs to us. Without our help, it'll take them at least a month or two to get here. Of course, those people must have already set off, but by the time they arrive here, everything should have already ended." At this point, he seemed to have thought of something and glanced behind Yi Xian. "As far as I know, there's another super genius in God Nation. Why isn't she here?" Little Seven. Yi Xian's face darkened. Obviously, Little Seven's disappearance might not have been caused by the people from the northern region. At this moment, Lian Xiaotian suddenly said, "Yi Xian, I have a champion under me who uses a sword as well. Why don't you have a spar?" As soon as he finished speaking, a young man appeared not far away from Yi Xian. The young man wore black clothes, and there were several cracks on his face. He looked rather ferocious, and he held a long sword in his left hand. "A spar." Yi Xian smiled. Before he could speak, Yuan Yi, who was not far away from him, suddenly said, "I'll do it." "Yuan Yi." Yi Xian looked at Yuan Yi, and the latter said, "You're the master god. There's no need for you to fight a small fry." As she spoke, she turned to look at the young man and was about to attack when Yi Xian suddenly said, "I'll do it." Yuan Yi gazed at Yi Xian. Yi Xian smiled, "I love fighting swordsmen." As he spoke, he gazed at the young man. "I'll give you a handicap. Bring it on." "A handicap?" As soon as these words were spoken, all the others were stunned. Isn't Yi Xian being too careless? The young man gazed at Yi Xian. He didn't speak, but his expression had become slightly ferocious. Meanwhile, Lian Xiaotian spoke abruptly. Since City Governor Yi said that he would give you a handicap, then please provide me with your guidance." The man called nodded, and then he suddenly vanished. A ray of black light flashed through the battlefield. The sword god. The expressions of the experts from the Divine Kingdom instantly became solemn when they witnessed this scene. Meanwhile, Yi Xian didn't dodge at all, nor did he attack. He just allowed Ada's sword to stab into the center of his forehead. The expressions of the experts from the Divine Kingdom instantly changed drastically when they witnessed this scene. As for Ada, his expression instantly changed violently. In the next moment, Ada's head flew into the air. Everyone in the surroundings was stunned. What's going on? Lien Xiaotian's eyes narrowed slightly while his expression gradually became solemn. Yi Xian looked at Lien Xiaotian in the distance and said with a smile, "Are there any other sword cultivators? Come at me. I'm invincible. I'm invincible." As soon as these words were spoken, the blood of the experts from the Divine Kingdom instantly boiled. Needless to say, Yi Xian's instant annihilation of Agata had truly boosted their morale. He'd instantly annihilated a sword god. At this moment, all the experts from the Divine Kingdom gazed at Yi Xian, and their gazes and hearts had started to change. The strong were respected. This world respected the strong. Lien Xiaotian chuckled lightly as he stood before Yi Xian. "I really underestimated you." As soon as he finished speaking, a violet-clothed man who held a spear in his hand suddenly appeared not too far away from Yi Xian. The violet-clothed man gazed at Yi Xian. "He didn't lose to you because his strength was inferior to you, it was because of your physique, right?" Yi Xian chuckled. "What nonsense are you talking about? Isn't my physique a part of my strength?" The violet-clothed man gazed at Yi Xian. "I'm not a swordsman. You won't be so lucky." Yi Xian smiled, and then he suddenly vanished in the next moment. "OM." A sword howl reverberated through the sky. The violet-clothed man's eyes narrowed slightly, and then he suddenly vanished in the next moment. His spear moved like a dragon, and its imposing aura surged like a rainbow. The spectators watched as the spear and sword collided in the most forceful manner possible. Bang! The violet-clothed man's spear instantly exploded into pieces, and then a sword pierced through the center of his forehead. The surroundings suddenly fell silent. It was an instant kill again. The expressions of the experts from Sky-Earth world had become quite unsightly, or perhaps it could be said to be slightly solemn. Yi Xian's strength was a little beyond their expectations. In fact, the experts from God Nation were also a little shocked, because not long ago, Yi Xian did not have any presence at all. But now, Yi Xian's strength was a little abnormal. In front of Yi Xian, the violet-clothed man stared at Yi Xian. "Your sword." "Sir." Yi Xian glanced at the executing heaven sword in his hand, and said with a smile, "You want to say that you lost to my sword, not my person, right?" The violet-clothed man said fiercely, "That's how it is." In the instant they exchanged blows just now, Yi Xian's executing heaven sword had directly shattered his spear. In his opinion, he had been suppressed by his equipment. Yi Xian walked in front of the violet-clothed man, and said with a smile, "I just love to see you guys annoyed at me but unable to do anything to me. It's so King comfortable. Haha." The violet-clothed man spat out a mouthful of blood, and died. Yi Xian waved his right hand, and the violet-clothed man's storage ring flew into his hand. Then he looked at Lien Xiaotian not far away, and said with a smile, "Is there anyone else who wants to come out?" Lien Xiaotian's expression was calm, and he looked at Yi Xian without saying a word. Yi Xian laughed heartily. "If there's no one in the younger generation, the older generation can too. It doesn't matter, I don't mind you bullying the weak." Bullying the weak. The experts from the Black-Yellow-Great world all had extremely ugly expressions. The younger generation. It was not that there were no super monsters among the younger generation of the Black-Yellow-Great world. There were even some in the northern region, but this time, none of them came. Moreover, those super monsters might not necessarily be more monstrous than Yi Xian. It had to be said that among the younger generation, even in the Black-Yellow-Great world, Yi Xian was definitely the best. On the rock, Lien Xiaotian turned to look at Xueqi on the altar not far away. "How much longer?" Xueqi said solemnly, "I have already detected some of her aura, at most an hour." An hour. In the distance, Yi Xian fell silent. Could these guys really find the plain-dressed woman? The plain-dressed woman. Yi Xian looked up at the starry sky. He really did miss the plain-dressed woman. This woman who had helped him countless times. He wondered how she was doing now. At that moment, Lien Xiaotian suddenly looked at Yi Xian. "Yi Xian, before I came, my king told me that if you are willing to hand over that treasure and submit to the northern region, we can let you go. Moreover, we will only absorb half of the chaotic universe's spiritual energy, leaving the other half for you. In addition, as long as the chaotic universe pays 50 billion divinity crystals to the northern region every year, we will not plunder the chaotic universe's major factions." Hearing Lien Xiaotian's words, The faces of the experts from the Divine Kingdom immediately darkened. Absorb half of the chaotic universe's spiritual energy? Pay 50 billion divinity crystals every year? This was tantamount to slowly carving out the chaotic universe's flesh. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled, saying nothing. Needless to say, the intentions of the profounder world were extraordinarily sinister. If he agreed, then even though the chaotic universe would be safe for now, the chaotic universe would never be able to rise again. Moreover, paying 50 billion divinity crystals every year meant that everyone in the chaotic universe would be working for the northern region. Most importantly, it would be a humiliation. Even if he agreed, the experts from the Divine Kingdom wouldn't agree. Of course, he wouldn't agree either. Lian Xiaotian spoke indifferently. If you don't agree, then the chaotic universe will vanish completely from this world. Which is more important? Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, Actually, I was a little panicked, but now I suddenly don't. Lian Xiaotian gazed at Yi Xian. Why? Yi Xian smiled. Because you're looking for her. The plain-dressed woman. Lian Xiaotian smiled. Do you think she can resist us? Yi Xian roared with laughter. Take a guess. Lian Xiaotian was just about to speak when the divine armament suddenly said, I found her. All of them gazed at the divine armaments. The divine armament raised his head and looked towards the depths of the starry sky. A woman in a plain dress could be faintly seen within his gaze. The divine armament was slightly excited. I found her. I found her. Follow my Weibo account. On Qingwan Peak. Check the news, let's make some waves. Chapter 667. Everyone here was looking at the old man called Shen Ji. Shen Ji's face was slightly pale. Clearly, he'd exhausted quite a bit of his strength. Suddenly, he formed a seal with his hands, and then he pressed it forward lightly. The laws of the world trace. Appear. As soon as he finished speaking, the space before him suddenly trembled violently, and then a scene appeared in front of him. It was a boundless starry sky. The surroundings were deathly silent, and only specks of starlight flickered there. It didn't take long for a woman in a plain dress to appear at the end of his field of vision. She wore a plain dress, had long hair that hung loosely on her shoulders, and the ends of her hair were tied up by a violet ribbon. She was walking towards the distant starry sky. Everyone was looking at the plain-dressed woman. Yi Xian was looking at the woman in a plain dress as well, and he instantly became slightly excited when he saw her. It really is her. Within the tower. The 5th level. Yu, Yanjia, and Yi Ling were looking at the woman as well. Yu's gaze had become extremely solemn as he gazed at her. It's her. Yanjia's eyes were extremely solemn as well. She's still in the 4th dimension. The woman in a plain dress. They weren't unfamiliar with her at all. Because they'd met her when the tower led them to battle those 3 fellows. The strength of those 3 was simply indescribable with words. Among the 3 of them, apart from the sword cultivator in the white robe, the woman in the plain dress and the man in green could be said to be extremely irritable. Especially the woman in the plain dress. Her temper was very unstable. Meanwhile, Yu suddenly said, Something bad is about to happen. Yanjia nodded. It is. Yi Ling was quite curious. Big sister Yu, is big sister Su Chong very strong? Yu nodded. Very strong. Yi Ling blinked. Even stronger than my older brother? Yu hesitated for a moment and said, You think your older brother is very strong? Yi Ling nodded. He is. I think that he should be able to fight big sister Su Chong. Yu said, If it's a competition of shamelessness, then your older brother is absolutely invincible. Thick skin. Yi Ling covered her mouth and giggled. Big brother's skin is much thicker than before. As she spoke up to hear, she seemed to have thought of something, and her expression suddenly turned gloomy. Yu asked softly, What's wrong? Yi Ling lowered her head slightly. When he was in Qingqing, he didn't even smile much. At that time he had a hard time. Yu gently rubbed Yi Ling's little head. There must be many people in this world who suffer more than him. Cherish everything you have now, understand? Yi Ling nodded her little head. I will cultivate well and not burden you in the future. Yu laughed and said, You're actually very strong, but you don't have any killing intent. You can be kind to your brother and your friends, but you can't be kind to your enemies, understand? Yi Ling nodded. Understood. Ah Yu nodded slightly and looked outside the prison pagoda. Outside the pagoda, the image of the woman in the plain dress grew clearer and clearer. At this time, she suddenly stopped and turned around, her eyes narrowed. Looking for me? In the distant starry sky of the chaotic universe, the Shenji stared fixedly at the woman in the plain dress. Do you dare show yourself and fight us? The woman looked coldly in front of her. Fight you? The Shenji laughed coldly. Don't dare? The corners of the woman's mouth curled up into a savage smile. What trash? The Shenji laughed coldly. If we are trash in your eyes, then why don't you show yourself? Fight me? The woman in the plain dress took a look at the divine armament, and finally, her gaze fell on Yi Xian. When she saw Yi Xian, her expression instantly became much gentler. Yi Xian hurriedly waved his hand. Hey! The woman looked at Yi Xian. Draw your sword. Before Yi Xian could react, the executing heaven sword at his waist suddenly flew out. Chi! A ray of light flashed. In an instant, the center of Shenji's forehead had been pierced by that ray of light before he could even react. Everyone here was stunned. Lian Xiaotian from Sky Earth World had disbelief written all over his face. The reason he was shocked was because the woman in the plain dress wasn't here. She'd actually killed a Shenji from countless stellar regions away. Moreover, she'd killed him with such ease. After being pierced by the sword, Shenji's eyes widened to the size of copper bells. His eyes were filled with disbelief. Just a moment ago, he didn't even know how he'd been killed. That sword. He couldn't describe it with words. Just like that, the Shenji fell slowly to the ground. Lian Xiaotian gazed at the woman while he slowly clenched his right fist. Meanwhile, the woman was looking at him as well. The corners of Lian Xiaotian's mouth curled up slightly. We underestimated Yi Xian, and we underestimated you a little as well. The woman's face was emotionless. A little? As she spoke, her gaze gradually turned icy cold. You'll never know how weak you are. Lian Xiaotian roared with laughter. Weak? While I can't be considered as the strongest expert in the Northern Territory, no one has ever said that I'm weak. As he spoke, he gazed at the woman and said, Come, use that move of yours again. Let's see if you can kill me. As soon as he finished speaking, a powerful aura suddenly swept out from within him. Bang! As soon as this aura appeared, the starry sky in the surroundings started to tremble violently. It was like an earthquake, and it was extremely shocking. The expressions of the experts from the divine kingdoms instantly turned solemn when they witnessed this scene. Lian Xiaotian's strength absolutely crushed them. Yi Xian had a rather solemn expression on his face as well. Earlier, he'd intended to kill Lian Xiaotian with the boundless sword, but now that he'd witnessed Lian Xiaotian's strength, he wasn't fully confident in his ability to kill Lian Xiaotian. However, he was over 70% confident in his ability. The boundless sword. This sword technique disregarded one's realm of cultivation. Of course, even he wasn't absolutely confident in his ability. This sword technique was formidable, but he didn't dare say that it was invincible. Earlier, he'd intended to execute the boundless sword because he'd been prepared to risk his life. However, he hadn't expected that these experts from Profoundness World would actually be looking for the woman. That was something he hadn't expected at all. Yi Xian looked at the woman in the plain dress. Everyone present was looking at the woman in the plain dress. Lian Xiaotian gazed at her and laughed savagely. Bring it on. Draw your sword. My Profoundness World can even defy the heavens, let alone you. The woman remained expressionless. There are exceptions to defying the heavens. Defying me? There's absolutely no chance of survival. As soon as she finished speaking, she pressed her fingers together and pointed lightly. The execution heaven sword in front of Yi Xian trembled violently, and then a sword howl shot into the sky. In the next moment, it slashed directly towards Lian Xiaotian. Lian Xiaotian had a ferocious expression on his face as he suddenly pressed his palms together and slashed them forward. Bang! A force that could obliterate the world swept down from his palms. As soon as this force appeared, the space in an area of hundreds of thousands of kilometers was directly blasted apart. Moreover, the others in the surroundings retreated repeatedly at this moment. That force was unstoppable. Everyone in the surroundings was looking at the executioner's sword. It didn't take long for the execution heaven sword to slash against that force. Hiss! In the blink of an eye, The force vanished into thin air. In the next moment, the surroundings suddenly fell silent. A sword had stabbed into the center of Lian Xiaotian's forehead. Everyone in the surroundings fell silent. Lian Xiaotian's eyes were blank, and he was petrified. The woman gazed at Lian Xiaotian, and Lian Xiaotian's face was covered in disbelief. How? How could this be possible? No. That's absolutely impossible. He'd never imagined that he wouldn't even be able to resist a single attack from her. The woman disregarded Lian Xiaotian, and she gazed at Yi Xian. Yi Xian grinned. Long time no see. She gazed at Yi Xian for a long time, and then she spoke softly in the end. Your strength is barely passable. Yi Xian was instantly overjoyed. I've been working very hard on my cultivation. The woman shook her head. It's still slightly insufficient. Yi Xian nodded. I know. I'll continue working hard. The woman nodded slightly, and then she suddenly gazed at the execution heaven's sword. The sword trembled as if it was slightly fearful. Fearful. Yi Xian fell silent. He'd never seen the execution heaven's sword fear anything, but it was actually afraid of the woman. So, it was definitely related to her in the past. The woman gazed at the sword. I never expected that you would follow him. The execution heaven's sword trembled slightly, and then it emanated a low sword howl. The woman suddenly opened her palm, and then a sword appeared in her grasp. She gazed at the sword in her hand. You know what I mean. The sword trembled slightly. A short moment later, it transformed into a ray of light that shot forward, and it didn't take long for it to vanish into the starry sky. Yi Xian suddenly said, Do you recognize this sword? The woman glanced at the heavenly pearl sword, and then she said, This sword and my sword. As she spoke up to hear, she suddenly frowned. Come out. As soon as she finished speaking, a sword suddenly flew out from within Yi Xian's world prison pagoda. Seven's sword. Seven's sword trembled, and then it hid behind Yi Xian. It was even more terrifying than the heavenly pearl sword. The woman gazed at Seven's sword with an expressionless face. You're here as well. Seven's sword trembled, and it was even more afraid. Yi Xian looked at the woman. They seem to be very afraid of you. The woman in the plain dress looked at Yi Xian. These two swords, my sword, and another sword used to be one sword, but it was divided into four for some reason. Yi Xian was stunned. 4 swords? 1. The woman nodded. They were originally one, but now they each have their own sword Dao lives. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, and then he said, What would happen if these 4 swords were combined? The woman looked at Yi Xian. They would become the first sword. Yi Xian hurriedly asked, What sword? The woman said, Seeking defeat. Yi Xian was slightly stunned, and then he asked, Seeking defeat? The woman nodded. That year, I was invincible, and no one was a match for her. So she named it Seeking Defeat. As she spoke up to hear, she looked at Yi Xian. You can try to combine them. However, you can only combine the swords, not the spirits. In other words, you can combine them, and you can split them. They will still be themselves. Yi Xian asked, What would happen if I combine them? The woman fell silent for a moment, and then she said, Perhaps you'll be able to meet her. Chapter 668. See her? Yi Xian was puzzled. Who? The plain-dressed woman did not answer. She looked at Yi Xian. Cultivate well. I'll wait for you. As her voice faded, she became more and more illusory. Yi Xian hurriedly asked, Where are you going? The plain-dressed woman said, To kill. As her voice faded, she disappeared completely. Yi Xian was stunned, somewhat disappointed. The surroundings were so quiet that it seemed to have frozen. The plain-dressed woman. No one had expected this plain-dressed woman to be so powerful. She had killed Lian Xiaotian with a single sword strike, and it had been executed from countless star domains away. If her true body was here, how powerful would she be? Everyone looked at Yi Xian. At this moment, they finally understood why Yi Xian was so monstrous. They also understood why Yi Xian had been able to live for so long despite possessing a fifth-dimensional treasure. It turned out that there was such a great god standing behind him. Happy. This was what all the Scandinavian experts were thinking at this moment. Because the person behind Yi Xian was so powerful, this meant that the chaotic universe was completely capable of resisting the black-yellow great world. Yi Xian suddenly looked at the 100-man regiment in the distance. The leader suddenly said, "Retreat! Retreat!" Lien Xiaotian had died in battle. With just the 100 of them, there was no way they could resist the entire chaotic universe. Retreat! Yi Xian smiled coldly. Are you retarded? You still want to retreat? Kill them all! Kill them all! As his voice faded, the countless Scandinavian experts behind him charged forward. The leader of the 100-man regiment had a ferocious expression. Fight to the death! Fight to the death! As soon as he spoke, the 100 people charged forward. In order to prevent the black-yellow Great World side from losing too many people, Yi Xian also charged forward. It had to be said that these 100 people were indeed powerful. However, without the support of a top expert, they were no match for the chaotic universe's side. About 2 hours later, the 100 people were completely wiped out. Looking at the 100 corpses floating in space, Yi Xian remained expressionless. Beside him, Zhou Yafu suddenly asked, "What should we do with these corpses?" Yi Xian said, "Cut off their heads and hang them here." Everyone was shocked when they heard this, and they looked at Yi Xian in unison. Zhou Yafu hesitated for a moment, then said, "These people are not afraid of death, they are real men, to treat them like this." Yi Xian looked at Zhou Yafu. They fought to the death without surrendering, nor did they run away. I respect them from the bottom of my heart. But has Senior ever thought about it? Why had they come to the Chaos Verse? The destruction of our Chaos Verse. If we lose, then once they enter our Chaos Verse, will they respect the living beings of our Chaos Verse? No, they will be crueler than anyone else. When he spoke up to this point, he glanced at the surroundings. We respect the strong, but we don't respect invaders. So long as they are invaders, then no matter how strong they are or how unyielding they aren't worthy of our respect. So, we have to be stronger and crueler than them. As he spoke, he gazed towards the darkness in the distance. Shadow guards, cut off their heads. As soon as he finished speaking, over 20 people suddenly appeared, and it didn't take long for 100 bloody heads to appear before everyone. Yi Xian's face remained emotionless. Just hang them here. As he spoke, he gazed towards the depths of the starry sky. Our strength can't compare to Sky-Earth world, but we have to let everyone know that we dare to fight. We dare to fight. These words resounded incessantly in the minds of everyone present. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly said, "Clean up the spoils of the battle." Many of them instantly revealed delighted expressions when they heard this. After all, the equipment of this group was of the highest quality, and it was even better than the equipment of the soldiers of the Divine Kingdom. Yi Xian gazed towards the distance and noticed that the rock had been trapped by Mu Nanji and the others as well. Yi Xian walked over to the rock, and the rock instantly roared furiously. Yi Xian asked, "Do you want to surrender?" The rock glared angrily at Yi Xian with a ferocious gaze. Yi Xian nodded. "Kill it." As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. Right at this moment, an old man hurriedly said, "Divine Leader, can you hand it over to the old man?" Yi Xian gazed at the old man while Shangguan said, "He's the sect master of the Myriad Beast sect, and he's very skilled in taming demon beasts." Yi Xian nodded. "All right." The sect master was delighted when he heard this, and he hurriedly bowed. "Thank you." Yi Xian glanced at the surroundings, and then he said, "Miss Shangguan, distribute the spoils of the battle to everyone. As for how it should be distributed, you decide." Shangguan nodded. "Understood." Yi Xian didn't say anything else, and he turned around and left. Yi Xian arrived at a starry sky, and he just sat there in the starry sky while looking at the endless starry sky around him in silence. At this moment, a woman walked over to his side. It was Zhao Mu. Yi Xian looked at Zhao Mu and smiled. "Miss Zhao." Zhao Mu looked at Yi Xian and didn't say anything. Yi Xian spoke softly, "We've won this time. But for some reason, I can't feel happy at all." Zhao Mu walked over to Yi Xian's side and sat down. She didn't say anything. Yi Xian opened his palm, and the World Prison Pagoda appeared in his palm. Looking at the World Prison Pagoda in his hand, Yi Xian spoke softly. "This pagoda represents the 5 dimensions. Logically speaking, it shouldn't have fallen into my hands, but it just so happened to fall into my hands." As he spoke, he shook his head and smiled. "I have a feeling that I'll definitely have great trouble in the future." The World Prison Pagoda trembled, as if it was saying something. Xiao suddenly said. It said, it will bring you to the 5 dimensions. To the 5 dimensions? Yi Xian smiled and said, why are you going to the 5th dimension? Xiao replied, it said to go to the 5 dimensions to plant spirit fruits. Yi Xian, World Prison Pagoda. At this time, the World Prison Pagoda suddenly appeared in front of Xiao It looked at Xiao and trembled, as if protesting. Xiao waved her right hand, and the sword at the top of the pagoda suddenly flew into her hand. She looked at the World Prison Pagoda. Do you have a problem? The World Prison Pagoda was silent for a moment, then hurriedly shook its head, indicating that there was no problem. Xiao said, if you have a problem, you can say it, I'm not an unreasonable spirit. World Prison Pagoda. Looking at Xiao and the World Prison Pagoda in the pagoda, Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. He then stood up and looked at Zhao Mu. Miss Zhao, let's go. Zhao Mu nodded. At this time, Xian suddenly walked over. She glanced at Zhao Mu, then looked at Yi Xian. Do you want to return to the Order City now? Yi Xian shook his head. No. Xian looked at Yi Xian. Why? Yi Xian said softly, because the people from the black-yellow great world will definitely come again. As he spoke, he looked at the surrounding starry sky. From now on, this is the last barrier of our chaotic universe. The last barrier. Xian was silent. Here, almost all the top powerhouses of the chaotic universe were gathered. If they were defeated here, it would mean that the chaotic universe would fall. Yi Xian suddenly said, tell the Celestial Arcanum sect leader to come see me. Xian nodded slightly and left quietly. Soon, the Celestial Arcanum sect leader came in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian said, is there any news of Xueqi? The Celestial Arcanum sect leader shook his head. Not yet. Our people have already started to work on the Gate of Heaven. I hope there is good news. Yi Xian nodded and said, which universe is the closest to our chaotic universe? The one that hasn't perished. The Celestial Arcanum sect leader said in a deep voice, in the vast universe, they are far away from us. The reason why they haven't fallen into the hands of the Black-Yellow Great World is because we are closer to the Black-Yellow Great World than them. If we perish, the next target of the Black-Yellow Great World will definitely be them. Yi Xian nodded slightly. I will go to the vast universe. The Celestial Arcanum sect leader looked at Yi Xian. Lord God wants to join forces with them? Yi Xian nodded. Although we have to rely on ourselves, it is good to rope in some helpers. The Celestial Arcanum sect leader hesitated and said, this vast universe is a bit complicated. Yi Xian asked, how complicated? The Celestial Arcanum sect leader said in a deep voice, the vast universe is not unified. The forces are complicated. In the vast universe, there was a sect called the Prairie Blazing Sect. This sect was the most powerful and had the most members. However, the members of the sect were like rabid dogs. They killed and plundered everywhere they went, creating a foul atmosphere in the area. So, as he said this, he shook his head. It is very difficult to join forces with them. Yi Xian was silent for a moment, then said, we have to try. The Celestial Arcanum sect leader nodded. If we can get them to fight against the Black-Yellow Great World with us, it is naturally a good thing. However, Lord God should be careful this time. There are also experts there, especially this Prairie Fire sect. They are not easy to deal with. Yi Xian nodded. I am going to find them to cooperate, not to cause trouble. At this time, Xian suddenly said, do you want me to go with you? Yi Xian shook his head. There are still many things in God Nation that you need to be responsible for. As he said this, he looked at Zhao Mu. Miss Zhao, do you have time? If you do, come with me. Zhao Mu was about to speak when Yi Xian suddenly smiled. I know you have time. Let's go. Zhao Mu. After finding the Celestial Arcanum sect leader to find the route to the vast universe, Yi Xian set off with Zhao Mu. But this time, Yi Xian did not take the Imperial Starship. Instead, he took the Golden Dragon. The Golden Dragon's speed was not as fast as the Imperial Starship, but it was cool. On the back of the Golden Dragon, Yi Xian stood quietly, and not far from him was Zhao Mu. The vast universe. Yi Xian looked up at the distant starry sky and said softly, I hope those guys from the Black-Yellow Great World don't come so soon. What he needed the most now was time. About 2 hours later, Yi Xian and Zhao Mu entered the vast universe. Yi Xian sensed the surroundings and found that the spiritual qi in this universe was less abundant than the chaotic universe. At this moment, a strong aura suddenly appeared in the distance. Soon, a man in black appeared not far from Yi Xian and Zhao Mu. Yi Xian was about to speak, but at this time, the man in black suddenly looked at Zhao Mu. The corner of his mouth lifted slightly. "What a beautiful woman!" Yi Xian frowned slightly. The man in front of him had a strong aura. Although he had not reached the Emperor realm, he was at the peak of the Tendo realm. An expert of this level should not have such a temperament. Yi Xian was about to speak, but the man in black suddenly looked at him. "I want this woman." A sword suddenly pierced the man in black's eyebrows. The man in black's eyes widened. "I am Prairie Fire. How dare you?" Yi Xian raised his hand and slashed. Chi! The man in black's head flew off. Yi Xian looked at the head and said softly, "I am the divine lord of the god nation. Am I proud?" P.S. No tickets? Then let's do it. Is there anyone who wants to do it? Chapter 669. As he watched the youth's head fall, Yi Xian fell silent. He knew that this trip might not be so smooth. At this moment, a blur shot over from the distance. Yi Xian frowned, and a powerful sword aura swept out of his body. Rumble! This sword aura instantly forced the blur to a halt. The blur faded, and a man appeared in front of Yi Xian. The man wore a long black robe, with 2 small black characters engraved on his left chest. Prairie Fire. Prairie Fire. The man looked at Yi Xian. God of Swords. Yi Xian was expressionless. Yi Xian, a divine lord of the divine nation of the Chaosverse, wishes to meet the head of your Prairie Fire sect. The man narrowed his eyes. A divine lord of the Chaosverse. As he spoke, he sized up Yi Xian and sneered. "You're a divine lord of the Chaosverse?" Yi Xian was expressionless. "Do you want to die?" The man's expression turned savage. He was about to speak, but at this moment, a flying sword suddenly pressed against his brow. The sword penetrated half an inch, and blood gushed out. The man froze. He looked at Yi Xian. "Sir, have you come to provoke my Prairie Fire sect?" "You." At this moment, a streak of sword light slashed down from the man's shoulder. Rip! The man's entire right arm fell off. Yi Xian walked up to the man and looked at him. "Where is your Prairie Fire sect?" The man stared at Yi Xian. "This isn't your Chaosverse. You." Another streak of sword light slashed down. Rip! The man's left arm was sent flying. Yi Xian looked at the man. "Why don't you try spouting some more nonsense?" The man stared at Yi Xian. "I'll take you there." Yi Xian nodded. "Lead the way." Just like that, under the man's guidance, Yi Xian arrived at the Prairie Fire sect of the vast universe. As soon as he arrived at the Prairie Fire sect, a group of people surrounded Yi Xian, led by a middle-aged man in a black robe. The middle-aged man glanced at the youth next to Yi Xian, then at Yi Xian. "Did you chop off his arm?" Yi Xian nodded. The middle-aged man looked at Yi Xian. "I don't think my vast universe has any grudges with your chaotic universe." Yi Xian smiled. "There isn't. However, as soon as we arrived, your Prairie Fire sect members tried to steal my woman." At this moment, 2 pairs of eyes shot towards him like sharp swords. Yi Xian hurried to correct himself. "He's my friend. The Prairie Fire sect tried to steal my friend, so I taught you a little lesson." Yi Xian. Yi Xian Fire. The man stared. "Xian Yi. Yi Xian." Looking at the middle-aged man, Yi Xian said, "He should respect me and my friend. What do you think?" The middle-aged man shook his head and smiled. "In the vast universe, it has always been others who respect our Prairie Fire sect." Yi Xian opened his palm. A sword appeared in it. Yi Xian looked at the middle-aged man. "It seems we need to fight first. In this world, the strong were revered." He knew that he needed to gain the respect of these people. There was no other way but to use strength. Only when he was strong enough would these people take him seriously. The middle-aged man looked at Yi Xian and clenched his right fist. "As you wish." He was about to attack when a voice suddenly rang out from the horizon. So it's God Nation's City Lord Yi. Apologies for not coming out to greet you. Yi Xian lifted his head to look at the sky. A middle-aged man in a white robe was standing in the sky. The white-robed man said calmly, City Lord Yi, why don't you go fight the Xuanhuan Great World? Why do you have the time to come to our vast universe? Yi Xian narrowed his eyes. You know me? The white-robed man smiled. Who doesn't know you, City Lord Yi? Yi Xian smiled. You must be the sect leader of the Prairie Fire sect, right? The white-robed man shook his head. Vice sect leader. Yi Xian nodded. Vice sect leader, you should know why I'm here. The white-robed man smiled. I know. City Lord Yi wants to drag us into fighting the Xuanhuan Great World together, right? Yi Xian nodded. The white-robed man laughed. City Lord Yi, your wishful thinking is not ordinary. You want us to fight the Xuanhuan Great World, but I'd like to ask, what benefits do we get? Yi Xian said calmly, benefits? If the Chaos Verse is destroyed, who do you think they'll go after next? The white-robed man shook his head. City Lord Yi, the problem is that the people of the Xuanhuan Great World are going after your Chaos Verse, not our vast universe. Yi Xian fell silent. The white-robed man smiled. City Lord Yi, forgive me for being blunt, but this is a matter between your Chaos Verse and the people of the Xuanhuan Great World. It has nothing to do with us. Do you understand what I mean? Yi Xian looked at the white-robed man. You can represent the vast universe? The white-robed man smiled. Of course I can. My Prairie Fire sect is the master of the vast universe. Yi Xian nodded, then looked at Zhao Mu. Let's go. He finally understood. The Prairie Fire sect wanted to sit on top of the mountain and reap the spoils later. Or rather, it was none of their business. Given their attitude, if he continued to speak, he would undoubtedly be asking to be humiliated. Just as the two of them were about to leave, the white-robed man suddenly said, City Lord Yi. Yi Xian turned to look at the white-robed man. The white-robed man smiled. City Lord Yi, we know a bit about the Xuanhuan Great World. I heard that the king of the northern region wanted to adopt you as his son, but you refused. I have to say, your decision was very foolish. Yi Xian smiled. Then why don't you become his son, sir? The white-robed man's eyes narrowed. Yi Xian smiled again. I understand. It should be that you don't even have the right to be his son, right? The white-robed man's eyes grew cold. City Lord Yi, you must understand one thing. This is the vast universe, not your Chaos Verse. As soon as he finished speaking, several black-robed experts suddenly appeared not far behind Yi Xian and Zhao Mu. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. Vice Sect Master, are you going to fight me? The white-robed man looked at Yi Xian, but said nothing. Yi Xian smiled. Come, I'll give you 3 moves. Do you dare to attack? The expressions of all the Prairie Blaze experts instantly turned gloomy when they heard this. In the vast universe, no one had ever dared to act arrogantly before the Prairie Blaze experts. All the Prairie Blaze experts were looking at the white-robed man, but he hadn't attacked yet. Yi Xian smiled. What? You don't dare? The white-robed man looked coldly at Yi Xian. Yi Xian, the young and arrogant usually don't live for long. At this moment, Yi Xian opened his palm, and a sword appeared in his hand. Executing Heaven's Sword. Yi Xian walked towards the white-robed man with his sword in hand. In an instant, monstrous sword energy swept out from within him. The white-robed man's expression changed when he sensed the sword energy. At this moment, besides coldness, there was deep fear in his eyes as well. He'd naturally heard of Yi Xian. Moreover, he knew that Yi Xian had just repelled the attack from Sky-Earth World not too long ago. Right at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly stopped moving, and he gazed at the white-robed man with his sword in hand. Are you going to attack? The white-robed man gazed at Yi Xian and didn't dare speak. Yi Xian shook his head and chuckled. What a piece of trash. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. Right at this moment, one of the nearby Prairie Blaze experts suddenly shouted furiously, Who gave you the gall to actually dare to attack my Prairie Blaze? Suddenly, OM. A sword howl resounded in the surroundings. In the next moment, the head of that expert flew into the air. Hiss. Blood sprayed out like a fountain. Everyone here was stunned. He was instantly killed? He was instantly killed with a single strike? Yi Xian glanced coldly at the surroundings. Any more? Right at this moment, a man walked forward and stared fixedly at Yi Xian. He was just about to speak when a flying sword suddenly flashed through the surroundings. Hiss! The man didn't even have the chance to react before his head flew into the air. The surroundings suddenly fell silent as if it had been frozen. Yi Xian glanced coldly at the surroundings. Who else? Chapter 670. Who else? Yi Xian's voice was very calm, but it carried a ghastly killing intent that sent shivers down one's spine. The white-robed man stared fixedly at Yi Xian. He'd realized that he'd underestimated this city governor Yi. Not only had he underestimated Yi Xian's strength, he'd even underestimated Yi Xian's temper. In the distance, Yi Xian glanced at Prairie Blaze and the other experts, and a wisp of disdain suffused the corners of his mouth before he turned and left. Right at this moment, the white-robed man suddenly said, "City Governor Yi, we'll remember how you humiliated my Prairie Blaze sect today." Yi Xian stopped, but he didn't turn around. Those who humiliate others will be humiliated by others. All of you don't respect me, so why should I respect all of you? As soon as he finished speaking, he led Zhao Mu and vanished into the distance. He'd always believed that respect was mutual. If others respected you, then you had to respect them. If they didn't respect you, then why should you respect them? As the saying goes, if a mad dog insults you, then do you have to be like a mad dog and insult them as well? The meaning of this saying was that one shouldn't fuss about it with ordinary people. However, Yi Xian didn't think so. Some people were worse than mad dogs. If they insulted you or bullied you, then if you exercised forbearance and took a step back, they would take a yard when given an inch. Most people in the world were like that, bullying the weak and fearing the strong. So, one had to be a good person or a ruthless one. After Yi Xian left, the white-robed man's face was gloomy to the extreme. Yi Xian and Zhao Mu returned to the boundless starry sky. Just as they were about to leave the vast universe, a woman suddenly appeared before Yi Xian and Zhao Mu. From the looks of the woman, she was around 30 years old. She had a voluptuous figure, and the places that should be protruding were protruding, and the places that should be protruding were protruding. Her figure was very sexy, and her face was also very exquisite. It was simply a devil's figure, and the face of an angel. She was absolutely the woman of all men's dreams. Zhao Mu suddenly looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian's face was expressionless. "I'm a decent person." Looking at Yi Xian, Zhao Mu did not speak. In the distance, the woman walked up to Yi Xian. She sized up Yi Xian. "You are the divine nation's divine lord?" Yi Xian nodded. "You are." The woman glanced at the surroundings and said, "City Governor Yi, can we go somewhere else?" Yi Xian was silent. The woman continued, "I know why City Lord Yi has come. The Prairie Blazing sect isn't willing to talk to you, but I am." Yi Xian looked at the woman. "Who do you represent?" The woman said, "The Yin Yang sect." Yi Xian frowned. "Yin Yang sect." The woman nodded. "Change locations?" Yi Xian looked around and nodded. "Lead the way." The woman turned around and left. The woman brought Yi Xian and Zhao Mu to the Yin Yang sect. As soon as they entered the Yin Yang sect, Zhao Mu frowned. There were many women in the Yin Yang sect. No, it should be said that they were all women. Not only were they very beautiful, but they were also dressed in revealing clothes. They were very alluring. Along the way, many women stared at Yi Xian, and there was even greed in their eyes. This caused Zhao Mu's expression to become even more unfriendly. In a short while, the woman brought Yi Xian and Zhao Mu to a large hall. After entering the hall, Yi Xian's expression became slightly strange. On the walls around the hall, there were many paintings that were not suitable for children. Zhao Mu was expressionless, and his expression became even colder. The woman stopped and made an inviting gesture. "City Lord Yi, I am Xueqi, the sect leader of the Yin Yang sect." Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, and then asked, "Sect leader Xue, does your sect focus on dual cultivation?" Xueqi shook her head. "Not really." Yi Xian nodded and did not ask anything else. Xueqi looked at Yi Xian. "My Yin Yang sect was once the #1 sect in the vast universe. Unfortunately, it declined, and in the end, Prairie Fire rose. At this point, her expression became quite complicated. After Prairie Fire rose, they completely obeyed me to prosper, and opposed me to perish. In order to protect the people in the sect, my master had to use a great formation to hide everyone in the sect. However, the people of Prairie Fire never gave up on us. Yi Xian asked. Why? Concubine Xue Jingfei said softly. Because most of our Yin Yang sect disciples are born with charm bodies or some special physiques. In addition, we cultivate dual cultivation techniques. If we dual cultivate with our sect's disciples, the man will have great benefits. Yi Xian said solemnly. Their target is you? Xue Jingfei nodded. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, and then said, Sect leader Xue, you said that you cultivate dual cultivation, but why don't I see any men in your sect? Xue Jingfei said calmly. City Lord Yi, you might have misunderstood us. Our Yin Yang sect women can only have one man in their lifetime. The cultivation method they are cultivating now is just preparation for the future. If they meet someone they like, they can pass the Yin and Yang energy in their body to him. Both sides, one Yin and one Yang, become one. At this point, she looked at Yi Xian. Our Yin Yang sect women aren't as lascivious as the outside world says. We just look at the sex aspect. In that aspect everyone does it. Since they dare to do it, why don't they dare to say it? Some people look like gentlemen on the surface, but who knows how dirty they are? City Lord Yi, what do you think? Yi Xian smiled. Sect leader Xue, don't think too much. I don't have any bad thoughts about your sect. What I asked just now was just curiosity. Xue Jingfei looked at Yi Xian and didn't speak. Yi Xian said again, Sect leader Xue, you brought me here today for something, right? Xue Jingfei nodded. I want to bring the entire Yin Yang sect to the chaotic universe. To the primordial chaos monster race. Yi Xian was startled. Then he smiled. That's a good thing. It was indeed a good thing. Because he found that the Yin Yang sect women weren't weak. When he came in, he saw 12 emperors. Not only that, he also felt some powerful presences in the Yin Yang sect. This Yin Yang sect wasn't so simple. If they went to the chaotic universe, it was naturally a good thing for the chaotic universe. At this time, Yi Xian said, going to the chaotic universe is fine. But I have to make one thing clear. The chaotic universe is facing an unprecedented crisis. You must understand this. Xue Jingfei nodded. I know. The Yin Yang sect is willing to live and die with the chaotic universe. But, at this point she looked at Yi Xian. We need City Lord Ye's help. Yi Xian said, what kind of help? Xue Jingfei said, if we want to leave this vast universe, we will definitely alarm Prairie Blaze. They won't let us leave so. At this point, she looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian was silent. Xue Jingfei got up and bowed. City Lord Yi, I'm not using you. I'm asking for your help. If you help us get through this, we will repay you. Yi Xian shook his head. There's no need for repayment. Your trip to the chaotic universe is beneficial to the chaotic universe. As he said this, he looked at Xue Jingfei. Sect leader Xue, get ready. We are leaving for the chaotic universe. Xue Jingfei wanted to say something but stopped. Yi Xian smiled. Why? Xue Jingfei said softly, I know that City Lord Ye's strength is unparalleled. However, the Yin Yang sect has many people. Prairie Blaze can't do anything to you, but many of us can't resist them. Yi Xian was silent. As Xue Jingfei said, the people of Liao Yuan's sect definitely couldn't do anything to him. However, as the strongest sect in this vast universe, the Liao Yuan sect definitely wasn't simple. Once he was held up by the people of Liao Yuan's sect, the people of Yin Yang sect would be in danger. Xue Jingfei was worried about this. After a moment of silence, Yi Xian suddenly opened his palm. A voice transmission talisman suddenly disappeared. A moment later, a voice sounded in front of Yi Xian. What are your orders? It was Shangguan Er's voice. Yi Xian said, let the Dark Guards and Shenwu army come to the vast universe as fast as possible. A moment later, Shangguan Er's voice sounded, understood. Yi Xian looked at Xue Jingfei. Let's wait. Once my people arrive, we will leave. Xue Jingfei bowed slightly. Thank you. As she said this, she looked at Yi Xian and Zhao Mu. The two of you follow me. After that, she got up and left. Soon, under Xue Jingfei's lead, the two of them came to a secret room. Inside the secret room, there was a bed. Around the secret room, there was a strange fragrance. Yi Xian was a bit puzzled. Sect leader Xue, this is? Xue Jingfei said, this bed is my Yin-Yang sect's treasure, the Yin-Yang bed. Dual cultivation on the bed will have great benefits. As she said this, she looked at Yi Xian and Zhao Mu. The two of you can. Wait. Yi Xian suddenly said, Miss Xue, is there a misunderstanding? Xue Jingfei looked at Zhao Mu. Zhao Mu was expressionless, but his hands were clenched. Seeing this scene, Xue Jingfei smiled apologetically. Sorry, I thought too much. Zhao Mu suddenly looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian quickly said, Miss Xue, you should be more careful in the future. He knew Zhao Mu's temper. This woman was a violent maniac and would attack at the slightest provocation. However, what he didn't expect was that Zhao Mu didn't attack. Xue Jingfei bowed slightly to Zhao Mu. Please forgive me, Mississippi. Zhao Mu was expressionless and didn't say anything. Yi Xian quickly said, Let's go, let's go. As he said this, he took Zhao Mu and left the small house. Outside the small house, Yi Xian looked at Zhao Mu. Zhao Mu's expression was calm. No emotions could be seen. At this moment, Xue Jingfei suddenly said, City Lord Yi, if you need, we can arrange some special services for you. Yi Xian suddenly turned and looked at Xue Jingfei. Miss Xue, do you have a misunderstanding about me? Xue Jingfei looked at Yi Xian. What does City Lord Yi mean? Yi Xian said solemnly. Do I look like a pervert? Xue Jingfei. Yi Xian was about to speak when a woman suddenly came in front of Xue Jingfei and said solemnly, Prairie Fire's people found our area. Prairie Fire. Hearing this, Xue Jingfei's expression sank. P.S. Do you still have any tickets? Chapter 671. Yi Xian looked at Xue Jingfei. You seem to know that they are looking for your Yin-Yang sect. At this moment, he felt that something was wrong. The Yin-Yang sect would not rely on Scandinavia for no reason. After all, once they went to Scandinavia, they would be under Scandinavia's control. Who would be willing to live under someone else's roof? Only now did he understand that the Yin-Yang sect might have reached its most critical moment. Going to the chaotic universe might be their only choice. Xue Jingfei was silent for a moment, then said, Young Master Yi, to tell you the truth, not long ago, the Prairie Fire sect used some unknown method to find our approximate location. Speaking up to here, she looked at Yi Xian. We really have nowhere to go. Yi Xian smiled. I'm surprised that Sect Master Xue could be so honest. I'll say it again. Once we reach the chaotic universe, your sect will be a member of our chaotic universe. When we face the black-yellow great world, we might die in battle, but I can guarantee you that your sect will not die from internal strife. It had to be said that the women of the Yin-Yang sect were definitely desired by countless forces. These women had cultivated their entire lives. If they could obtain them, their cultivation would definitely skyrocket. Xue Jingfei looked at Yi Xian. If we go to the chaotic universe, my Yin-Yang sect is willing to live and die with the chaotic universe. Between death and humiliation, they would naturally choose death. Because they knew very well that once they fell into the hands of the Prairie Fire sect, it would be a fate worse than death. Yi Xian nodded. Get people to prepare. Once my people arrive, we'll set off. Xue Jingfei hesitated, then said, I'm afraid the people from the Prairie Fire sect will find us soon. Yi Xian looked at Xue Jingfei. He did not speak. Xue Jingfei hesitated, then said, Does City Lord Yi have any other requests? Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. Miss Xue, let's talk about it after you understand. Concubine Xue Jingfei glanced at Yi Xian and was about to speak. At this moment, a woman suddenly rushed in. Sect Master. Someone is forcefully breaking the formation outside. Consort Xue Jing was about to speak when Yi Xian suddenly said, I will go. Gather the Yin-Yang sect's men. Once my men arrive, we'll leave. As he spoke, he looked at the woman in front of him. Take me there. The woman glanced at Yi Xian and then at Xue Jingfei, who nodded slightly. The woman said, City Lord Yi, please. Yi Xian looked at Zhao Mu. You stay here. With that, he turned around and left with the woman. Zhao Mu did not stay and followed them. Yi Xian had no choice but to let her follow. Not long after, Yi Xian arrived at the entrance of the Yin-Yang sect. Not far in front of him, there was a thin light screen. Outside the light screen was a grassland. Right at this moment, a white-robed man suddenly appeared in front of the light screen. Seeing this person, Yi Xian was stunned. This person was the deputy sect master of the prairie sect that he had met not long ago. The white-robed man suddenly turned sideways and an old man appeared beside him. The old man held a black compass in his hand. The old man silently chanted a few words and the compass in his hand began to spin violently. Soon, the light screen in front of Yi Xian suddenly became illusory. Seeing this, the white-robed man's mouth slightly curled. Yin-Yang sect. After a few breaths. Boom. The screen of light suddenly exploded. Soon, the entire Yin-Yang sect appeared in front of the white-robed man. The white-robed man suddenly laughed. But soon, his smile froze because he saw Yi Xian. When he saw Yi Xian, the white-robed man's smile gradually turned cold. Yi Xian, why are you here? Yi Xian smiled. So it's the deputy sect master of the prairie sect. What a coincidence. The white-robed man stared at Yi Xian. Yi Xian, my prairie sect will definitely eat up the Yin-Yang sect. Yi Xian smiled. Are you provoking me? The white-robed man clenched his fists. A group of people had appeared behind him at some point. There were more than 100 of them, and they were all experts of the prairie sect. Yi Xian grinned. Does having more people make you stronger? The white-robed man said in a low voice. City Lord Yi, we have no intention of becoming enemies with you. Our target is just the Yin-Yang sect. Yi Xian smiled. Then I might be a little embarrassed. The Yin-Yang sect has already submitted to my divine kingdom. They are now people of my divine kingdom. The white-robed man narrowed his eyes. It seems that City Lord Yi has no choice but to intervene. Yi Xian was about to speak when concubine Xueqi suddenly walked out. She looked at the white-robed man. My Yin-Yang sect has already submitted to the divine kingdom. From now on, we will move to the chaotic universe. The white-robed man grinned. Concubine Xueqi, do you think that's possible? He suddenly pointed at Yi Xian angrily. Do you think he can protect you? In your dreams you... Wang! A sword hum rang out. Chi! Before the white-robed man could react, his entire right arm flew off. Everyone was shocked. The white-robed man looked at Yi Xian in shock. You? Yi Xian looked at the white-robed man. You should respect me. The white-robed man said, Yi Xian you. Right at this moment, a strand of light flashed through the battlefield. Chi! The white-robed man's head flew off. Blood spurted out. Seeing this, the experts of the prairie sect were shocked. Yi Xian's strength far exceeded their expectations. In the distance, Yi Xian looked up at the sky. The main character still hasn't shown up? After a moment of silence, an old man suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. Concubine Xueqi, who was next to Yi Xian, said in a deep voice, Sect leader of the prairie sect, Mo Shanxing. Mo Shanxing glanced at Yi Xian. He was expressionless. City Lord Yi, you've stretched your hand too far. Yi Xian smiled. I thought you wouldn't show up. Mo Shanxing said indifferently. City Lord Yi, my prairie sect has no enmity with you. We don't want to become enemies with you. Yi Xian smiled. I don't want to be entangled with you either. However, the Yin-Yang sect must come with me. Mo Shanxing looked at Yi Xian. My prairie sect will eat the Yin-Yang sect. No one can protect it. This is the attitude of the prairie fire sect. Yi Xian smiled. Looks like we're going to spar? Mo Shanxing nodded. The old man also wants to see how monstrous City Lord Yi is. As soon as he finished speaking, another 20 people appeared behind him. A total of 120 people. The auras of these 120 people were extremely powerful. Among them, 16 were Emperor Realm powerhouses, and 6 were God Realm powerhouses. As for Mo Shanxing, he was unfathomable. Mo Shanxing looked at Yi Xian. Unless City Lord Yi can kill me in a second, my people will take all the women of the Yin-Yang sect away. Yi Xian smiled. Try me. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly slashed forward. Mo Shanxing narrowed his eyes. He flicked his sleeves. A powerful force surged out like a tide. In an instant, the surrounding space began to boil. Yi Xian's sword arrived. Boom! In an instant, Mo Shanxing was sent back hundreds of zhang. Seeing this, the faces of the Prairie Sect powerhouses turned ugly. From the looks of it. In the distance, Mo Shanxing's face was also extremely gloomy. Yi Xian's strength was stronger than he had imagined. Yi Xian looked at Mo Shanxing. The Yin-Yang sect is under my protection. As soon as he finished speaking, he pointed his sword diagonally to the ground. Hum. The executing heaven's sword trembled violently. A sword hum shook the sky. Mo Shanxing looked at Yi Xian. His expression gradually became ferocious. Yi Xian, the old man tells you, this is the vast universe. Even if you're a dragon, the old man has to kneel before you. As soon as he finished speaking, he waved his right hand. 2 shadows shot toward Yi Xian. 2 God Realm powerhouses, plus Mo Shanxing, a total of 3 God Realm powerhouses. No, Mo Shanxing was a peak God Realm powerhouse. The moment the 3 of them made their move, the rest of the Prairie Sect powerhouses followed suit. Obviously, the purpose of Mo Shanxing and the other 2 was to stall Yi Xian. In the distance, Yi Xian was expressionless. Bullying me because I have fewer people? As soon as he finished speaking, he waved his right hand. 6 fiend corpses suddenly appeared in front of him. 6 God Realm fiend corpses. The moment the 6 fiend corpses appeared, Mo Shanxing's face changed. At this time, 9 swords suddenly appeared above the heads of the Prairie Sect powerhouses. Sword formation. The moment the 9 swords appeared, a wave of sword light engulfed the Prairie Sect powerhouses. In an instant, miserable screams rang out. Seeing this, Mo Shanxing's face turned savage. Yi Xian. As soon as he finished speaking, he took out a token arrow and threw it out. Boom! The token arrow shot up into the sky, shaking the horizon. After a few breaths, a dozen powerful auras suddenly attacked from the horizon. Behind Yi Xian, Xueqi said solemnly, "It's the enforcer of the Prairie Sect." Enforcer. Yi Xian looked at them. Needless to say, their auras were really strong. Moreover, they were all Emperor Realm powerhouses. Yi Xian was just about to attack when the horizon in the distance suddenly shook. In the next moment, some strange black-clothed figures suddenly appeared around the experts of the Prairie Sect. As soon as these black-clothed figures appeared, the heads of the experts of the Prairie Sect flew off one by one. Hidden guards. Yi Xian raised his head and looked at the sky. 1,000 people were diving down from the sky. The imposing aura of these 1,000 people wasn't just a little bit stronger than the Prairie Sect's powerhouses. The Divine Martial Army. And the person in the lead was Xueqi. Yi Xian was slightly surprised when he saw Xueqi. He hadn't expected that she would personally lead the army here. The Prairie Sect's sect master, Mo Shanxing's face changed when he saw the experts of the Divine Kingdom. Retreat! It didn't take long for the Prairie Sect's powerhouses to retreat a few hundred meters away. After the Divine Martial Army landed, they knelt down on one knee towards Yi Xian and said in unison, "Greetings, Divine Lord." Divine Lord. In the hearts of everyone from the Divine Kingdom, Xueqi was the true Divine Lord. Moreover, they didn't reject Yi Xian because Yi Xian's strength was sufficiently formidable. Moreover, Yi Xian had been personally chosen by Xueqi. It was perfectly justifiable. Yi Xian looked at the crowd in front of him. Rise! All of them stood up in unison, and then they turned around to look at the experts from the Prairie Sect. Mo Shanxing fell silent for a moment before he said, "City Governor Yi, this is a misunderstanding. My Prairie Sect." Yi Xian was about to speak when Xueqi spoke solemnly. "It's inadvisable to fight here. Our true enemy is the Sky-Earth world, and it'll be very disadvantageous to us if we fall into this place." Yi Xian fell silent for a moment, and then he gazed at Mo Shanxing. "Kill them." Chapter 672. Kill them. When she heard Yi Xian's words, Xueqi was stunned. Yi Xian was expressionless. What's the point of keeping them if not killing them? To keep them to give us trouble in the future? Enemies. Toward enemies, Yi Xian's approach had always been to not be merciful. Not only could he not be merciful, but if he could, He must kill them all. Would the Prairie Fire sect be grateful if he let them go today? No. It would only give them a chance to breathe, and they would definitely take revenge in the future. He, Yi Xian, did not like to kill the enemy without killing them all. If he did not kill them all, it would only bring sorrow in the future. When they heard Yi Xian's words, the Dark Guards had already moved out. The Dark Guards were extremely fast, appearing in front of the Prairie Fire sect powerhouses in an instant. Very soon, the Prairie Fire sect powerhouses fell one by one. And the Divine Martial Army also moved out when the Dark Guards moved out. Overwhelming. The Prairie Fire sect was very strong in the vast universe, but there was still no way to compare with the powerhouses of the Divine Nation. The Divine Nation's strength was weaker than the Black-Yellow Great World, but its system was definitely not weaker than any other place. Moreover, the Divine Nation had gotten rid of the Tendo many years ago, and then controlled the Tendo source of this world. Therefore, in terms of individual strength, the Divine Nation was definitely much stronger than the average universe. For now, the Divine Nation might only be weaker than the Black-Yellow Great World. Of course, there were countless universes in the vast universe, and no one knew if there were other powerful universes or universes with special civilizations. The moment the Divine Martial Army moved out, Mo Shanxing's expression suddenly became extremely ugly. Retreat, retreat quickly. With that, he led the Prairie Fire sect powerhouses and turned to run. They could not fight at all. If the Prairie Fire sect wanted to win, they had to kill Yi Xian first. And Yi Xian was the strongest among this group. There was no way to fight at all. At this moment, they only realized that the Divine Nation was actually so powerful. They could not afford to provoke it. Run. The Prairie Fire sect fled, but the Dark Guards, the Divine Martial Army, and Yi Xian's demonic corpses did not stop. If Yi Xian said he would kill them all, then he would kill them all. Yi Xian suddenly looked at Xueqi of the Yin-Yang sect. The latter pondered for a moment and said, "Mobilize all the Emperor Realm experts of the Yin-Yang sect." Very soon, streams of powerful auras flew out from the Yin-Yang sect. Yi Xian said softly, "Let's go to the Prairie Fire sect and take a look." With that, a golden dragon swooped down and landed steadily in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian jumped onto the golden dragon, followed by Xueqi, Zhao Mu, and Shangguan. Soon, the golden dragon soared away. On the back of the giant dragon, Yi Xian suddenly asked, "Leader Xue, if the Burning Prairie sect is removed, can the vast universe be unified?" Consort Xueqi looked deeply at Yi Xian then said, "Yes. Not only that, the people of this vast universe will thank you." Yi Xian nodded, then said, "Miss Shangguan, let our people take over the vast universe." Shangguan glanced at Yi Xian, then nodded. "All right." With that, she began to contact the chaotic universe. Before long, they arrived at the Prairie Fire sect. At this moment, the Prairie Fire sect had already activated the defensive grand formation. Everyone in the Prairie Fire sect was looking at Yi Xian and the others in the sky. Mo Shanxing stared at Yi Xian. "Yi Xian, do you really want to fight to the death with us?" Yi Xian looked at Mo Shanxing. "Fight to the death? Are you qualified?" With that, he waved his right hand, and a sword suddenly tore through the air. Executing Heaven's Sword. The moment this sword fell, the defensive grand formation of the Prairie Fire sect instantly shattered. This chapter is not finished. Please continue. Yi Xian waved his right hand. Kill! The Divine Martial Army directly swooped down. The enormous dragon beneath Yi Xian's feet charged down as well. At the instant the enormous dragon charged down, the expressions of the countless Prairie Fire sect experts below changed drastically. Dragon Aura. This dragon aura was simply too terrifying, and it made it difficult for them to breathe. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly charged down as well. With the current Yi Xian and the executing Heaven's Sword, it could be said that only an End Realm expert above the God Realm could go against him. As for End Realm experts, only the Xuanhuan Great World had them now. When he saw Yi Xian charge over, Mo Shanxing's expression instantly changed. He had seen how terrifying Yi Xian was. In terms of a one-on-one battle, no one in the entire Prairie Fire sect could go against Yi Xian. After hesitating for a moment, Mo Shanxing suddenly roared furiously, "Summon the Ancestor!" As soon as he spoke, a beam of white light suddenly shot into the sky within the entire Prairie Fire sect. The white light shot into the clouds, and it didn't take long for a middle-aged man to gradually condense within the white light. Everyone present was looking at the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man's gaze landed on Yi Xian, and very quickly he frowned. Sword God. As he spoke, he suddenly looked at the sword in Yi Xian's hand. When he saw the sword, the middle-aged man's expression instantly changed. It's this sword. Yi Xian frowned slightly. You recognize it? The middle-aged man stared at Yi Xian. Why is it in your hands? Yi Xian looked at the executing heaven sword in his hand. Do you recognize him? The executing heaven sword trembled. Yi Xian raised his head and looked at the middle-aged man. It doesn't recognize you. The middle-aged man looked at Yi Xian and asked, Why is it in your hands? Yi Xian smiled. It's a long story, so I won't say much. Let's fight? The middle-aged man was silent for a moment, and then he nodded. Yi Xian stomped his right foot. A sword radiance soared into the sky. In the air, the middle-aged man clenched his right hand and punched down. Kaboom! The surrounding space immediately became illusory. Soon, the two afterimages in the air exchanged blows fiercely. Before long, Yi Xian suddenly returned to his original position, and in the air, the middle-aged man's body had become completely illusory. Seeing this scene, Mo Tianqing's expression suddenly became extremely ugly. In the air, the middle-aged man looked at Yi Xian. You're her descendant. But as far as I know, she seems to use her fists. Yi Xian frowned slightly. Who is she? The middle-aged man also frowned. You don't know her? Yi Xian said in a deep voice. Are you talking about the original owner of the executing heaven sword? The middle-aged man was about to say something, but suddenly, his body completely disappeared. Yi Xian looked at the executing heaven sword in his hand. Your previous owner was a woman? The executing heaven sword trembled and replied. Yi Xian said softly. Is she very powerful? The executing heaven sword suddenly trembled violently, as if it was a little excited. Yi Xian said with a smile. Very powerful. Then can you contact her? Let her come to the chaotic universe to play. Shangguan glanced at Yi Xian and did not speak. The executing heaven sword suddenly calmed down, a little gloomy. Yi Xian was about to speak when Mo Tianqing suddenly roared, Everyone, retreat! As soon as he finished speaking, he turned into a black light and disappeared at the end of the sky at an extremely fast speed. Escape! Seeing Mo Tianqing escape, Yi Xian and the others were stunned. Not only Yi Xian and the others, but even the experts of the Prairie Fire sect were stunned. He just ran away like that? Soon, the Prairie Fire sect, this chapter is not over, please continue to the next page. The experts of the Prairie Fire sect also fled. Since the sect master had fled, they naturally would not continue to stay here to die. It could be said that Mo Tianqing's escape directly made all the experts of the Prairie Fire sect lose the will to resist. Yi Xian glanced at Mo Tianqing in the sky. He did not chase because if this kind of expert wanted to escape, he would not be able to catch up. However, he did not intend to let him go just like that. Yi Xian said, Secret guards. As soon as he finished speaking, more than 20 people in the dark quietly disappeared. Yi Xian said again, Take care of all the people of the Prairie Fire sect who fled. As Yi Xian's voice fell, the group of divine martial army not far behind him directly rushed out. And Yi Xian brought Shangguan and the other two women to the Prairie Fire sect. Yi Xian glanced around and then said, There should be a lot of treasures. After saying that, he disappeared not far away. The three women. About half an hour later, Yi Xian returned in front of the three women, and on his face, there was a trace of a smile than before. Yi Xian laughed, he bent his finger, and a storage ring fell in front of Shangguan Some treasures, distribute them to the brothers. Shangguan shook her head. No. Yi Xian was a little puzzled. Why? Shangguan said solemnly. The divine nation has a reward and punishment system. We can't give the spoils of war to them every time. In the long run, many people will feel that it is reasonable, and then people's hearts will change. Of course, we will also reward ourselves according to merit, and we will not mistreat anyone who serves the country. Yi Xian thought about it, then nodded, Okay. As he said that, he looked at Xueqi. Miss Xue, are you still going to the chaotic universe? Xueqi nodded. Yes. Yi Xian was a little puzzled. Why? You have to understand, now that the Prairie Fire sect has been eliminated, here. At this point, he stopped abruptly and didn't continue. Because he found that the spirit energy in this vast universe was very thin, and there was very little Tendo source. Yi Xian nodded. Then Miss Xue, get ready, we will leave together. Xue Jingfei glanced at Yi Xian. We are ready, we can leave at any time. Yi Xian thought about it, and then said, Miss Shangguan, after our people come here, let them contact the people here and find those with good talent. Ask them if they are willing to go to the chaotic universe. Don't force them. At this point, he paused for a moment, and then said, don't give up even if your talent isn't good. A person's achievements are not measured by talent alone. Shangguan Xian nodded. I understand, I will arrange all of this. Yi Xian was about to speak, but at this moment, he suddenly raised his head, frowned, and then transformed into a ray of sword light that shot into the sky. At this moment, Xue Jingfei suddenly said, I'll go take a look. After saying that, she also shot into the sky. Seeing Xue Jingfei follow, Zhao Mu didn't hesitate at all and directly followed. Shangguan Xian looked at the void in the sky and frowned slightly. In the void, Yi Xian stopped. Not far in front of him stood a woman. The woman wore a white robe and had a wine gourd hanging on her waist. She looked valiant and formidable. Yi Xian's expression was very solemn. The woman in front of him gave him a very, very dangerous feeling. And the woman in front of him was just a clone. A clone actually gave him this kind of feeling. At this moment, the executing heaven sword at Yi Xian's waist suddenly trembled violently, as if saying something. P.S. At this moment, the monthly votes in everyone's mouth trembled violently, as if saying something. What are you saying? Say quickly vote. End of this chapter. Chapter 673. Seeing the executing heaven sword tremble, Yi Xian frowned slightly. He looked at the executing heaven sword in his hand. You know her. The executing heaven sword trembled slightly, then floated in front of the woman in the distance. The woman glanced at the executing heaven sword. Then her gaze fell on Yi Xian. She just stared at Yi Xian. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, then said, Senior, you know me? The woman suddenly walked in front of Yi Xian. She didn't say anything, just continued to stare at Yi Xian. Yi Xian felt very uncomfortable being stared at. At this moment, the woman suddenly turned her head. Not far in front of her stood a middle-aged man. The middle-aged man looked at the woman with an incomparably solemn expression. May I ask if you are the Sword Martial School's ancestral master? The woman looked at the middle-aged man, but didn't speak. Seeing that the woman didn't speak, the middle-aged man hurriedly bowed deeply. I am Black Yellow Great World's Northern King's chief guest, Li Suifeng. Northern King. Yi Xian's face sank. Someone from Black Yellow Great World had actually come here. Were they looking for him? The woman ignored Li Suifeng and looked at Yi Xian again. As she looked at him, her gaze suddenly became somewhat complicated. The look in her eyes couldn't be described with words. On the other hand, Yi Xian was secretly on the alert. Compared to Black Yellow Great World's Li Suifeng, he was more afraid of this woman. The woman in front of him gave him the feeling that she was unfathomable. At this moment, Li Suifeng suddenly said, Senior, are you also interested in this Yi Xian? The woman looked at Li Suifeng. Li Suifeng said solemnly, Senior, this Yi Xian has killed countless experts of my northern territory. It can be said that our northern territory is absolutely irreconcilable with him. As he said this, his expression changed because a powerful aura directly enveloped him. Li Suifeng was shocked. Senior, you. The woman looked at Li Suifeng. The latter was about to speak, but at this moment, the woman raised her hand and punched. Boom! Without warning, Li Suifeng's body directly exploded. As for Li Suifeng's soul, he instantly retreated 10,000 zhang away. Yi Xian was stunned. Li Suifeng was also dumbfounded. He looked at the woman, and the woman looked at Yi Xian. She just looked at Yi Xian, and gradually, her body became more and more illusory. Just as she was about to turn completely illusory, she suddenly said, I will come and find you. As soon as she finished speaking, she disappeared. Looking for me? Yi Xian frowned. Was he here to cause trouble for him? Suddenly, Li Suifeng spoke in a low voice. Yi Xian, I never expected that you would even alarm the founding ancestor of the sword martial school. Yi Xian looked at Li Suifeng. What is this sword martial gate? Li Suifeng sneered and said, the sword martial school is located in the central mainland region of the Black-Yellow Great World. The people in this sect are all cultivators of both sword and martial arts. They are the top 3 sects in the central mainland. Moreover, the sect master of the Divine Martial School resides in the Seal Pavilion of the Black-Yellow Great World. Do you know about the Seal Pavilion? There are 9 statues in the Seal Pavilion, and these 9 people are all extraordinary geniuses and experts in the history of the Black-Yellow Great World. The Sword Martial School's sect master is one of them. Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then he said, I'm not bad as well. Do I have the qualifications to enter and have a statue erected there? The corners of Li Suifeng's mouth twitched slightly, and then he looked coldly at Yi Xian. City Governor Yi, can you please have some idea? Yi Xian shrugged, and then he said, she said she was looking for me. Perhaps she saw that I'm an extraordinary genius and wants to take me as her last disciple. Li Suifeng sneered, what kind of dream are you having in broad daylight? As he spoke, he pointed down. Do you know who the founder of the Prairie Flame sect is? Yi Xian shook his head. I don't. Li Suifeng said, the founder of the Prairie Flame sect is from the Sword Martial School. Slaughtering the Prairie Flame sect is equivalent to declaring war on the Sword Martial School. Yi Xian's face remained emotionless. Are you done? Li Suifeng's eyes narrowed slightly. You want to kill me? Yi Xian said. Isn't that obvious? As soon as he finished speaking, the soul suppression sword suddenly appeared in his grasp. OM. A sword howl resounded. At the instant he saw the soul suppression sword, Li Suifeng's expression instantly changed drastically, and then he turned around and fled. Meanwhile, the soul suppression sword in Yi Xian's hand suddenly flew forward. Hiss! A ray of light pierced through Li Suifeng in the distance. In an instant, Li Suifeng was absorbed by the soul suppression sword. However, Li Suifeng crushed a transmission talisman at the moment he was absorbed. Meanwhile, Soul's excited voice resounded in Yi Xian's mind. Young master, this soul is great. It's great. Yi Xian roared with laughter. It's great. You'll live well with me in the future. Soul hurriedly said. All right. Yi Xian smiled and then looked at the executing heaven sword in front of him. After the woman left, the executing heaven sword's mood became somewhat gloomy. Yi Xian gently touched the executing heaven sword and then said, was she one of your former masters? The executing heaven sword trembled and then returned to the prison pagoda. Inside the prison pagoda, Xiao Ling came in front of the celestial sword. She glanced at the executing heaven sword. Little Zhu, I'm going to attack the 8th floor. Are you interested? Executing heaven sword. Outside. Yi Xian was silent for a moment, then he turned and looked at Shangguan and the other 2 women not far away. Return to Divine Nation. Return to Divine Nation. Shangguan nodded and looked at Xue Jingfei. Miss Xue, let your people come over. Xue Jingfei nodded and turned to leave. Shangguan walked in front of Yi Xian and said softly, I'm afraid it won't just be people from the north who will come to the chaotic universe in the future. Yi Xian smiled bitterly. I'm sorry. Shangguan shook her head. Without you they won't let go of the chaotic universe. Yi Xian looked up at the distant starry sky and said softly, that woman just now was very strong. That woman just now gave him a very strange feeling. It should be said that it was a very special feeling, but he couldn't describe it specifically. At this moment, a black-clothed man suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. The black-clothed man bowed slightly. Divine Master, we couldn't catch the Burning Prairie sect master. Should we continue to chase? Yi Xian shook his head. No need. Let the people from Celestial Arcanum sect find this person's whereabouts and keep track of his movements. The black-clothed man bowed slightly and turned to leave. Yi Xian looked at the end of the sky and said softly, Black-Yellow Great World. So far, what the Black-Yellow Great World had shown could be said to be the tip of the iceberg. And what he was facing now was not the entire Black-Yellow Great World, but just the north. And he knew that one day, he would have to face the entire Black-Yellow Great World. And there was also Xueqi. He had to say that at this moment, he really missed Xueqi. That super confident little girl. In her eyes, Even the black-yellow great world was nothing. And until now, there was no news of her. At this moment, Xueqi came not far in front of him, and behind Xueqi was a group of yin-yang sect powerhouses. Yi Xian nodded. Let's go. As his voice fell, the crowd. They set off for the chaotic universe. On the back of the golden dragon, Yi Xian sat cross-legged. Not far from him were Shangguan and Zhao Mu, while Xueqi was on the other side. Yi Xian closed his eyes slightly. He took out a Dao-grade sword and inserted it into his body, and began to absorb the sword. Cultivate. Breakthrough. Now, he would choose to devour the sword whenever he had time. Devouring the sword could improve his own cultivation. And now, he was eager to improve his strength. His strength was too weak, because he was facing the entire black-yellow great world. Seeing that Yi Xian was cultivating, Shangguan and Zhao Mu did not disturb him. Shangguan sat aside, took out a desk, and began to organize all kinds of documents. Whether it was Xueqi or Yi Xian, they were actually in charge of everything. The one who was really in charge was Shangguan It could be said that many of the internal affairs of the divine nation were handled by Shangguan It was also because of this that the status of the counselors beside the divine lord was very high. Previously, when Nangong Wan was driven back to the Eastern Barren territory by Xueqi, the status of the entire Nangong family could be said to have plummeted. And now, the most respected family in the divine nation was undoubtedly the Shangguan family, because the 2 generations of divine lords had put Shangguan in an important position. About an hour later, everyone entered the chaotic universe. And just as they entered the chaotic universe, a black-clothed man appeared in front of Yi Xian. The black-clothed man said in a low voice, "Divine Lord, that Mo Shanxing has gone to the black-yellow great world. He may be going to the sword martial school in the black-yellow great world." Sword martial school. Yi Xian frowned slightly. Mo Shanxing's purpose should be to rely on the sword martial school and then wait for an opportunity to come back for revenge. The black-clothed man suddenly said, "Divine Lord, should we chase after him?" Sword martial school. Yi Xian was silent for a moment, then shook his head. "No need." The black-clothed man bowed slightly and quietly left. At this time, concubine Xueqi came in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian looked at Shangguan Miss Shangguan, help them settle down. Remember, the girls of the yin-yang sect have a special cultivation. Don't let others find trouble with them. Just say that I said it. Shangguan nodded. Understood. After saying that, she turned and left with concubine Xueqi. After the 2 women left, Yi Xian looked at Zhao Mu. "Miss Zhao, will you live in Order City?" Zhao Mu glanced at Yi Xian, then turned and left. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. Then he called Yi Ling out. During this period of time, Yi Ling had been cultivating with Yu and Yan Jia. It has to be said that under the guidance of the 2 women, Yi Ling's cultivation had really advanced by leaps and bounds. She was now a peak emperor realm. Yi Xian said, "Do you still remember what you promised others?" Yi Ling nodded. "Brother, I will establish an immortal Dao sect in Order City now, is that okay?" Yi Xian smiled. "Naturally. If you need anything, just look for big sister Shangguan, understand?" Yi Ling smiled sweetly. "Okay." After saying that, she leaped off the golden dragon and headed towards Order City. Looking at Yi Ling below, the smile on Yi Xian's face gradually froze. Yi Ling. Sister. She was the most important person in his life. He would never allow anyone to hurt her. Absolutely not. Yi Xian turned and looked towards the depths of the starry sky. He slowly clenched his right hand and said softly, "Black-yellow great world. Laozi will fight you to the end." After saying that, he turned and left. However, he hadn't taken a few steps when he suddenly stopped and said, "No, Laozi has to call for help. I need help." Chapter 674. God Nation. Order City. Inside the temple, Yi Xian sat quietly. Devour. After returning to the Order City, Yi Xian continued to devour swords. He didn't lack swords at all. He didn't lack swords of the Dao realm. With his current wealth, he could use it for a long time. Not to mention that he was now the king of God Nation and could mobilize countless resources. especially the palace treasury that Xueqi had left behind. That wealth was amazing. However, he didn't touch it. That was Xueqi's. He had to wait for Xueqi to come back. Inside the temple, Yi Xian absorbed the swords crazily. His aura was also skyrocketing. About 3 days later, in the hall, Yi Xian suddenly stood up. Boom! A powerful aura suddenly swept out from his body, causing the entire hall to tremble. Yi Xian took a deep breath and a turbid air floated out of his mouth. Supreme Realm. Now he had reached the Supreme Realm, and if he went further, he would be in the Sage Realm. In other words, he wasn't far from the Emperor Realm. Now that he had recultivated in adversity, if he reached the Emperor Realm, he would definitely be different from ordinary Emperor Realm powerhouses. Of course, he could easily kill Emperor Realm powerhouses now. His current strength couldn't be measured by normal realms. After a while, Yi Xian walked out of the temple. Outside the temple, Shangguan had been waiting for a long time. Yi Xian looked at Shangguan what's wrong? Shangguan said solemnly, there's news of His Majesty. Xueqi. Yi Xian said solemnly, speak. At this time, Celestial Arcanum Sect Master appeared in front of Yi Xian and said solemnly, we found out through Elysium that the person who took His Majesty away might be a mysterious force in the black-yellow great world called Dao Sect. Dao Sect? Yi Xian frowned slightly. Do you have detailed information about this force? Celestial Arcanum Sect Master shook his head. No. This force was extremely mysterious in the Xianhuang Great World. Everyone only knew that the people of this force were extremely mysterious. They almost never participated in the worldly battles of the Xianhuang Great World. However, no one dared to question their strength. In the Xianhuang Great World, there is a Xianhuang Divine Martial Leaderboard. The first and second place on the leaderboard belong to the Dao Sect. At this point, he paused for a moment and continued, although the Dao Sect isn't the #1 power in the Xuanhuan Great World, there's a saying in the Xuanhuan Great World. Although they aren't #1, the #1 doesn't dare to offend them. Taoism. Yi Xian said solemnly. Do you have any specific information about them? The Tianji sect head hesitated for a moment before replying, yes, but we have to go to a certain place. After our men went there, they never returned. Yi Xian asked in a deep voice, where is it? The Celestial Arcanum sect leader said, Thousand Chant City. This city isn't too far from here, and the people from that sect have appeared in Thousand Chant City before. This Thousand Chant City might be their territory, because our people don't even need to talk about entering. Just getting close to this place would cause them to disappear. Thousand Chant City. After a moment of silence, Yi Xian said, I'll make a trip there. The Celestial Arcanum sect head looked at Yi Xian. He hesitated for a moment before saying, the old man doesn't recommend God Lord to take the risk. If something happens to you, our God Nation will collapse. Now that the God Nation didn't have Xueqi, if something happened to Yi Xian, it would undoubtedly be a disaster for the God Nation. What the God Nation needed the most now was a person like Yi Xian who could hold the fort. Don't think that the God Nation was harmonious. If there wasn't someone who could hold the fort, the God Nation would immediately fall into chaos. The human heart was the most complicated thing. Yi Xian smiled faintly. It's fine. If I want to leave, they won't be able to stop me. He wasn't bragging. With the immeasurable sword, he believed that as long as he wanted to run, ordinary people definitely wouldn't be able to catch him. And it wasn't normal, unless the other party had an expert like the Demon Lord. The Celestial Arcanum sect head wanted to say something, but Yi Xian suddenly said, It's fine, I'll go personally. With that, he looked at Shangguan I'll leave the God Nation's matters to you for the time being. Shangguan said solemnly, It's best not to take risks. Yi Xian smiled, If I can't beat them, I'll run. Shangguan Yi Xian looked at the Celestial Arcanum sect head. Where's Qianji City? The Celestial Arcanum sect head was silent. Yi Xian smiled. Don't you know my ability? If I want to run, ordinary people can't do anything to me. But we don't know the exact situation of Xueqi, so I have to go. The Celestial Arcanum sect head was silent for a moment, then he pointed his finger and a scroll appeared in front of Yi Xian. This is the route. Yi Xian nodded. I'll leave the God Nation's matters to the two of you. Wait for my news. Also, if someone from the Xianhuang Great World comes, be sure to inform me, understand? Shangguan Xian nodded. Understood. Yi Xian nodded slightly, then turned into a sword light and disappeared at the end of the sky. Shangguan Xian looked at the end of the sky and said softly, "He and His Majesty are really friends." The Celestial Arcanum sect head nodded. Both of them are swordsmen, they focus on the pursuit of the heart, so neither of them will play those tricks. Also, can't you see? Our city lord Yi really doesn't have much interest in the Divine Lord position. If it wasn't for His Majesty, he might not have come to be the Divine Lord. Shangguan Xian nodded. After spending some time with Yi Xian, she found that Yi Xian didn't have much desire for power besides being greedy for money. And even if he was greedy for money, he didn't embezzle the God Nation's treasury and Xueqi's treasury. Not a single cent. This was something she didn't expect. After a moment, Shangguan Xian looked up at the sky and said softly, "I hope everything is safe." At the end of the sky, Yi Xian flew on his sword, but this time, he didn't bring the golden dragon. Because it was too ostentatious. This time, his purpose was to inquire about Xueqi's news. In the starry sky, Yi Xian flew on his sword and disappeared into the depths of the vast starry sky. About 2 hours later, Yi Xian finally arrived at Qianji City. Qianji City was not in the starry sky, but on a continent. This continent had no name, and this continent, for some reason, only had one city. It was Qianji City. Celestial Arcanum sect had very little information about this Qianji City, because every time their people got close to this Qianji City, they would disappear for no reason. Obviously, this place was not simple. Yi Xian used the chaos qi to hide himself, and then quietly came to the gate of Qianji City. There were people walking in the city, but there were only a few people. And the clothes of these people were very different from normal people. These people wore animal skins, and there were many ornaments made of similar demon beast bones hanging on their bodies. Not the human race? Yi Xian frowned slightly. He quietly walked in. The buildings in the city were also different from other cities. Most of the buildings in this city were simple tents. Primitive people. These 3 words came to Yi Xian's mind. A long time ago, when humans first appeared, at that time, humans lived in caves, and then slowly turned into simple shacks. Yi Xian glanced around. He had to say that these people in front of him looked more and more like primitive people. Yi Xian continued to move forward, and soon, he came to the city center. There were more people in the city center. Moreover, Yi Xian found that these people's aura was a bit strong. Physical strength. Pure physical strength. Several of them even had Emperor Realm physical strength. Very extraordinary. Yi Xian continued to move forward, and soon, he came to a palace, which was also the only palace in the city, and this palace was also a bit simple. Yi Xian was about to go in, but at this moment, a middle-aged man suddenly appeared in front of him. Yi Xian stopped right away. The middle-aged man looked right in front of him. Yi Xian's face sunk. Although he was invisible, he knew that the man was looking at him. He was noticed. He could even notice the chaotic energy. Yi Xian didn't hide anymore, and he appeared right away. After Yi Xian appeared, the middle-aged man was expressionless. "Who are you?" Yi Xian said, "Chaotic Universe, God Country." Chaotic Universe. The middle-aged man frowned. "What are you doing here?" Yi Xian looked at him. He waved his right hand and Seven's portrait appeared in front of him. "Find her." When he saw Seven's portrait, his eyes squinted. In the next moment, he punched towards Yi Xian. Yi Xian was prepared for this. He slashed down with his sword. This sword slashed down, and he retreated 1,000 feet. As soon as he landed on the ground beneath him collapsed. Yi Xian's expression was extremely solemn. His physical strength was so strong, much stronger than his own. In other words, his physical strength was probably above Emperor Realm. Yi Xian looked at the middle-aged man. "You know where she is?" The middle-aged man was expressionless. He suddenly vanished, and in the next moment, a powerful aura swept towards him like a storm. Yi Xian narrowed his eyes. He dashed forward and slashed down with his sword. Pest! A sword hum resounded. In the next moment, the middle-aged man was pushed back by Yi Xian's sword. The middle-aged man glanced at his right hand, and there was a deep wound on it. It was caused by executing Heaven's sword. The middle-aged man looked at executing Heaven's sword in Yi Xian's hand. Good sword. Yi Xian looked at the middle-aged man, and his expression became even more solemn. He couldn't believe that this person actually used his physical body to block his executing Heaven's sword. What sort of physical body is that? Yi Xian spoke in a low voice. Where did you take little seven? The middle-aged man gazed at Yi Xian. It's not something you can interfere in. Yi Xian's eyes narrowed slightly. She's my friend, so I'm definitely interfering in this. As soon as he finished speaking, Chen Shi suddenly charged forward and roared furiously. In the next moment, a ray of bright light slashed down from above the middle-aged man's head. The middle-aged man didn't retreat, and he charged forward instead and directly collided with Yi Xian's sword. Rumble! An explosion resounded as both Yi Xian and the middle-aged man were pushed back repeatedly. However, the middle-aged man stopped after moving 300 m back while Yi Xian moved over 600 m back. After he stopped, Yi Xian wiped off the blood on the corners of his mouth, and then he gazed at the middle-aged man. Let me see if your soul is as formidable as well. As soon as he finished speaking, executing Heaven's sword transformed into soul-suppressing sword. The middle-aged man's face fell when he saw the soul-suppressing sword. Why do you have so many good swords? And one that targets the soul. When he spoke up to this point, he gazed at Yi Xian. We don't need external objects to fight one-on-one. Yi Xian was speechless. P.S. Today is the 1st, so everyone must have a lot of monthly votes. Don't hesitate, it's me, the most handsome kid in the world. Chapter 675. I won't use any external objects. Yi Xian's face darkened. How can you say such shameless words? I'm a swordsman. You think I won't use a sword? Fight you with my fists? Are you still human? The middle-aged man looked at Yi Xian. That sword of yours isn't an ordinary sword. It's not fair. Yi Xian said indifferently. Your realm is so much higher than mine, and your physical body is so much stronger than mine. Is that fair? The middle-aged man was silent for a moment before saying, You won't use those two swords. I'll fight you with one hand. Yi Xian smiled. You don't have to use one hand either. Let's make a bet. I won't use these two swords to fight you one-on-one. If I win, you'll tell me where she is. How about that? The middle-aged man looked at Yi Xian. After a moment, he nodded. Deal. Yi Xian immediately put away the executing Heaven sword and soul-suppressing sword. The middle-aged man said, Let's go somewhere else. With that, he turned around and left. Yi Xian didn't think too much and followed him. Soon, the middle-aged man brought Yi Xian to a training field. The training field was huge, and there was a thin light screen around it. In the middle of the training field, the middle-aged man looked at Yi Xian. Attack! Yi Xian stomped his right foot hard. Boom! The entire ground shook violently. In the surroundings, the power of countless earth veins gathered toward him. At the same time, the power of the earth spirit contained in the great Tao Law was released toward Yi Xian. Yi Xian clenched his right hand slowly. Rumble! A powerful aura suddenly swept out from his body. At the sight of this, the middle-aged man's eyes became slightly solemn. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly leaped up. The next moment, he punched the middle-aged man. Burial Fist. After giving up on the sword, he directly used the Great Tao Law and Burial Fist. These were two of his trump cards. In the face of Yi Xian's punch, the middle-aged man had a solemn expression in his eyes, but he didn't show any fear, nor did he dodge. He took a step forward and blasted his fist out. Heaven-shaking punch. As his voice fell, the two powerful forces directly collided with each other in the most brutal way. Rumble! In an instant, with the two of them as the center, the ground within a 3-kilometer radius was directly shattered, and the thin barrier of light in the surroundings also collapsed at this moment. A powerful force wreaked havoc in the surroundings, causing even the space to distort. It was an incomparably terrifying sight. A moment later, the surroundings returned to tranquility. Yi Xian and the middle-aged man looked at each other from afar. Both of them had a trace of blood at the corner of their mouths. The middle-aged man looked at Yi Xian. What kind of punch is that? Yi Xian grinned. Burial Fist. Burial Fist. The middle-aged man said in a deep voice. Very strong. Yi Xian laughed and said, "You are also very strong. Come, let's continue." As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly rushed out. Bang! His body directly split space apart. Even though his physical body couldn't compare to the middle-aged man, it wasn't inferior to him. Coupled with the fact that he was enhanced by the Grand Tao laws, his physical strength wasn't inferior to the middle-aged man at all. A head-on battle. At the instant that Yi Xian charged forward, the middle-aged man charged forward right after him. Physical combat. Numerous explosions resounded incessantly, and even space itself was trembling violently. In next to no time, the middle-aged man had a slight headache. Because while Yi Xian was engaging him in physical combat, Yi Xian was using his flying swords. Even though these flying swords weren't as sharp as the swords Yi Xian wielded earlier, he didn't dare underestimate them. Because they were aimed at his vital points, so he didn't dare to go head-on against them. Just like that, the middle-aged man was gradually suppressed by Yi Xian because he was enhanced by the flying swords. Bang! Right at this moment, the middle-aged man was suddenly blasted back by a single sword strike from Yi Xian, and he just stopped when Yi Xian suddenly appeared in front of him and smashed his fist towards him. Burial fist. The middle-aged man's expression changed when he saw it was Chen Shi's burial fist again, and he swiftly pressed his arms together before sweeping them forward. Bang! As soon as Yi Xian's fist descended, the middle-aged man was instantly pushed over 1 kilometer back. As soon as he stopped moving, the space behind him instantly shattered apart. At the same time, a wisp of blood slowly seeped out from the corner of his mouth. The middle-aged man wiped off the blood on the corner of his mouth, and then he gazed at Yi Xian. He slowly opened his palms, and then he suddenly pressed them together. Iron wall. As soon as he finished speaking, a strand of energy suddenly descended from the sky, and it directly surged into his body. Rumble. The middle-aged man's figure shook violently. At the same time, a thin strand of golden light appeared around him. Yi Xian's face fell when he witnessed this scene. The middle-aged man's body has definitely become stronger again. A moment of silence ensued before Yi Xian suddenly charged forward and smashed his fist towards the middle-aged man's face. This time, the middle-aged man actually didn't dodge or resist, and he just allowed Yi Xian's fist to strike his face. Bang! The middle-aged man moved over 10 m back, but Yi Xian had retreated explosively by over 1 kilometer. After he stopped moving, Yi Xian glanced at his right hand. At this moment, his right hand was numb, and at least 80% of the strength of that punch had been reflected back at him. Yi Xian gazed at the middle-aged man. Not only has this man's body improved by a few levels, he's even able to reflect the strength of his attack. Is he even human? He's a devil, right? The middle-aged man walked slowly towards Yi Xian. The ground trembled with every single step he took, and the formidable strength and physical defense he possessed were sufficient to instill despair in others. Yi Xian spoke in a low voice. That's probably a divine technique, right? The middle-aged man gazed at Yi Xian and said, "My ultimate technique isn't an external object." An ultimate technique? Yi Xian nodded slightly. All right, then I'll use my ultimate technique as well. As soon as he finished speaking, he opened his right hand, and a sword flew into his grasp. In the next moment, monstrous sword energy suddenly swept out from within him. Yi Xian looked at the middle-aged man and grinned. 1. When he uttered the word 1, the surrounding space collapsed directly. Yi Xian said again, "Sword." As soon as he uttered the word, buzz! The sound of a sword soared into the sky, and in an instant, the entire Chenji city began to crumble inch by inch. At this time, the smile on Yi Xian's face had become somewhat ferocious. None. As soon as he uttered the word, a sword energy had swept across the entire Chenji city, and the space within a radius of nearly 100,000 feet began to disappear and be annihilated inch by inch. Seeing this scene, the middle-aged man's eyes were filled with horror. This time, there was no fear in his eyes, but panic. Just as Yi Xian was about to utter the last word, the middle-aged man suddenly said, "I admit defeat." Admit defeat? Yi Xian was slightly stunned. This guy admits defeat? The middle-aged man stared at Yi Xian and said again, "I admit defeat." In that instant, he had truly felt death looming over him. If he didn't admit defeat, he knew that his physical body would definitely not be able to withstand the sword that Yi Xian was about to release. He definitely could not withstand it. Yi Xian put away his sword, and in an instant, the surrounding sword energy disappeared directly. He didn't want to use this immeasurable sword. This immeasurable sword didn't have much of a side effect. No, it should be said that there was basically no side effect, but the consumption was a bit big. Now that the middle-aged man admitted defeat, he would naturally stop. One must know that the purpose of this time was to find Xueqi, not to kill. Seeing that Yi Xian stopped, the middle-aged man immediately breathed a sigh of relief. He glanced at Yi Xian. What sword skill was that just now? Yi Xian said, Immeasurable sword. I created it myself. The middle-aged man was stunned. Created it yourself? Are you sure? Yi Xian said seriously. Of course. This sword skill was created by me when I was 18 years old. I'm a swordsman, I won't lie. The middle-aged man looked at Yi Xian. Are you sure that you created it yourself? Yi Xian said indifferently, Let's not talk about this. You've lost. Now, it's time for you to fulfill your promise. I lost. The middle-aged man's face instantly sank. After a moment, he said in a deep voice, You shouldn't have looked for her. Yi Xian looked at the middle-aged man. Why? You want to go back on your words? The middle-aged man went silent. Yi Xian's expression gradually turned cold. You can't afford to lose? The middle-aged man shook his head. Young man, first tell me, who is she to you? Yi Xian said. Friend. Friend. Hearing this, the middle-aged man glanced at Yi Xian, and after a moment of silence he said, Since you're her friend, then there's no harm in telling you. We'll take her away and won't hurt her. Yi Xian said in a deep voice. Why did you take her away? The middle-aged man shook his head. I can't tell you. Yi Xian frowned slightly, and the middle-aged man said, Don't worry, we won't hurt her. On the contrary, we're protecting her. Protecting her? Yi Xian said in a low voice. What do you mean? The middle-aged man shook his head. It's none of your business. All you have to know is that we won't hurt her. As he spoke, he glanced at Yi Xian. Her identity is special. If she stays at the place you're from, then she'll be in danger, and you'll be in danger as well. Yi Xian was slightly puzzled. I'll be in danger as well? What do you mean? The middle-aged man's face was expressionless. You're that Yi Xian from the chaotic universe, right? Yi Xian nodded. The middle-aged man said, According to the information we have, some mysterious powers have started to pay attention to you, and they might be about to act against you. Yi Xian hurriedly asked, Which mysterious powers? The middle-aged man said, Go back. We don't want to have any entanglements with you. Yi Xian was silent for a moment, and then he said, Can I see her? The middle-aged man shook his head. She's already in the Xianhuang Great World. Don't worry, we won't hurt her. Just take care of yourself. As he finished speaking, he turned and left. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly appeared in front of the middle-aged man. He looked at him. I want to know that she's fine. Otherwise, I won't let this matter rest. The middle-aged man looked at Yi Xian. Do you know what you're doing? Yi Xian laughed savagely. What am I doing? I have enemies all over the universe. Do you think I'll be afraid of you? So what if there's one more of you? The other party was too perfunctory. They wanted to dismiss him with a single sentence that they wouldn't hurt Little Seven? How was that possible? Before he saw Little Seven, he didn't believe anyone. The middle-aged man stared at Yi Xian. Don't force us. Yi Xian suddenly said angrily, Either I see her or you kill me. As the sound of his voice faded, an illusory Xiaota suddenly appeared between his brows. World Prison Pagoda. The moment the World Prison Pagoda appeared, a formless pressure suddenly enveloped the entire thousand-chant city. The middle-aged man looked at Yi Xian. Are you crazy? The only sword. Chapter 676. The middle-aged man's expression was extremely unsightly. When Yi Xian took out the World Prison Pagoda, he once again felt the aura of death. World Prison Pagoda. If this fifth-dimensional treasure was activated, its power would not be any lower than the limitless sword. Yi Xian stared at the middle-aged man, his expression fierce. I want to see her, do you understand? The middle-aged man looked at Yi Xian. You'd better not act recklessly. Yi Xian smiled malevolently. It seems that if I don't kill a few people, you guys won't give a damn about me. As his voice fell, he suddenly activated the World Prison Pagoda. In the next instant, a red light enveloped the middle-aged man. At the same time, a large blood-red character prisoner appeared above the middle-aged man's head. When this character appeared, the middle-aged man's expression changed. This was the first time he had been so close to death. At this time, an old man suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. The old man was dressed very simply. He wore plain clothes and a pair of cloth shoes. With a head full of white hair, he looked very sage-like. The old man looked at the blood-red character prisoner above the middle-aged man's head and said softly, "Fifth dimensional." As he said this, he looked at Yi Xian. "I'll let you see her." Hearing this, Yi Xian looked at the old man. "Really?" The old man nodded. "Really?" Yi Xian waved his right hand and the World Prison Pagoda disappeared. The blood-red character prisoner above the middle-aged man's head also disappeared. The middle-aged man let out a sigh of relief. In that instant, he knew that if Yi Xian did not stop, he would definitely die. The middle-aged man looked at Yi Xian, his eyes filled with dread. This Yi Xian's personal strength was not particularly monstrous, but his treasures were not ordinary. Moreover, each one was more terrifying than the last. Yi Xian looked at the old man. The old man said softly, "That fifth-dimensional treasure is really extraordinary." Yi Xian said softly, "What about her?" The old man nodded. "Follow me." As he said this, he turned and left. Yi Xian followed. Not long after, the old man brought Yi Xian to a secret room. Inside the secret chamber, the old man walked in front of a box. He opened the box and a white light floated out. Soon, a person appeared in the white light. Little 7. Xueqi was in a cave. She sat cross-legged on the ground like she was cultivating. Yi Xian frowned. "What is this place?" The elder said, "The Xianhuang Great World." Yi Xian said in a low voice, "She wouldn't have left the Divine Kingdom for no reason." He was clear about 7's personality. She was a responsible person and there was no way she would leave the God Kingdom at such a time. The old man laughed. "She didn't want to leave at first, but she had to go with us in the end." Yi Xian asked in a low voice, "Why?" "Because some people have already discovered her. If she doesn't go with us, your God nation will not only have to face the northern region, but the entire black-yellow Great World." As he said this, he looked at Yi Xian. "Especially when the two of you are in the Chaos Verse. The two of you are more special than the other. If the two of you are in the Chaos Verse, can the Chaos Verse withstand it?" Yi Xian's face darkened. The old man spoke as if he and Xueqi were scourges. The old man said, "You are her friend and you are qualified to be her friend. That is why I let you come here. However, you must understand that her identity is as special as yours. We are taking her away to protect her. As for your Chaos Verse, she can't go back for now." Yi Xian said in a low voice, "Will she never come back?" The old man laughed. "That will depend on her own will." Yi Xian was silent for a moment. Then he asked, "Are you from the Taoist sect?" The old man looked at Yi Xian. "Little fellow, we don't want to have any entanglements with you. It's best that you don't interfere in our matters. It's for your own good." Yi Xian said, "I am her friend." The old man fell silent. Yi Xian didn't say anything else. He just turned around and left. Since he knew that Xueqi was fine, he was relieved. Actually, he had always been very confident in Xueqi. If Xueqi hadn't taken the initiative to leave with them, then they would have definitely not taken her away by force. Since Xueqi had chosen to leave, she definitely had her reasons. Right when Yi Xian was about to leave, the old man suddenly said, "Young man." Yi Xian stopped and turned around to look at the old man. "What is it?" The old man fell silent for a moment, and then he said, "You cultivate the body as well?" Yi Xian nodded. The old man smiled. "We are very proficient in cultivating the body. Moreover, we have some divine techniques related to the body. Are you interested?" Yi Xian was struck dumb. Then he asked, "Why?" The old man shook his head. "There is no reason. If you are interested, you can study here for a period of time. Your body will definitely undergo a qualitative transformation. Yi Xian said, I am interested. He had already seen the body of that middle-aged man. If he had such a strong body, then just thinking about it was exciting. The old man nodded. Follow me. With that, he brought Yi Xian out of the secret room. In a short while, the old man brought Yi Xian to a huge mountain that was tens of thousands of kilometers away from the city. No, it should be called a volcano. As soon as he got close to the volcano, Yi Xian felt a wave of heat. The old man brought Yi Xian to the entrance of the volcano. From his angle, the lava below was surging, and the heat waves were monstrous. It was extremely terrifying. The old man pointed with his finger, and a green pill flew in front of Yi Xian. Consume it. Yi Xian glanced at the green pill, and he didn't think too much about it. He consumed it right away. For an expert of his level, it was impossible for the other party to poison him to death. After consuming the pill, Yi Xian instantly felt a surge of energy in his body, and this energy enveloped his entire body. At this time the old man looked at the volcano below. Jump down. Jump down? Yi Xian looked at the old man. Jump down? The old man said indifferently. Your body is at the Emperor realm. Why would you be afraid of this mere lava? Yi Xian was silent for a moment, and then he leaped into the boiling lava. As soon as he entered the lava, all his clothes turned into ashes. At the same time, he felt like his body was burning. That feeling wasn't particularly good, but fortunately, his body was strong enough. Therefore, he only felt a little uncomfortable, but it wasn't fatal. At this time, the old man suddenly took out a white jade bottle. He poured it down lightly, and a drop of blood-red bead fell. The moment that drop of blood-red bead fell into the lava, the entire lava boiled. At the same time, a dark red flame suddenly enveloped Yi Xian. Ah! A heart-wrenching scream suddenly resounded from the magma. It was Yi Xian's voice. Ouch! This was what Yi Xian was feeling right now. The moment he was enveloped by the crimson flames, he felt as if his entire body was being torn apart. At this moment, the old man took out a black jade bottle. He poured it down and a drop of black liquid fell from the sky. The moment the black liquid entered the magma immediately exploded. At the same time, a cloud of black gas suddenly enveloped Yi Xian. Ah! Screams rang out incessantly from within the magma. The pain was unbearable. This was what Yi Xian was feeling at the moment. Only now did he realize how fragile his body was. At this moment, he felt pain all over his body, as if his nerves were being pricked by needles. That feeling was too terrifying. He almost jumped out a few times. But he still withstood it. He knew that this might be a good opportunity for him to improve his physical body. If he gave up on this chance, he might not have many chances like this in the future. He didn't know why the old man wanted to help him, but he didn't want to care about that. He would take the benefits first. At this moment, a middle-aged man suddenly appeared by the old man's side. It was the middle-aged man who had fought Yi Xian earlier. The middle-aged man looked at Yi Xian and spoke in a low voice. Elder, why are you helping him? The old man was expressionless. This person is rather special and is good friends with His Majesty. He might be of help to us in the future. The middle-aged man hesitated for a moment and said, Even so, we shouldn't use such noble king and beast blood. The old man spoke softly. His physical body has already reached the Emperor realm. Ordinary things won't be of any use to him. Since we want him to owe us a favor, we naturally have to make him owe us a bigger one. The middle-aged man nodded slightly and didn't say anything else. The old man looked at Yi Xian and spoke softly. This person's talent might be inferior to His Majesty, but his fate is extremely complicated, even more so than His Majesty. No matter what, let's make him owe us a favor first. As for the future, let's talk about it in the future. The middle-aged man nodded. This person isn't simple indeed, especially that sword technique that he created. The old man thought of the sword technique that Yi Xian had displayed earlier. The old man shook his head and smiled. He said that he created it himself. Do you believe that? The middle-aged man looked at Yi Xian. Of course I don't. This fellow has a glib tongue and doesn't seem like a good person. The old man spoke softly. He's indeed quite different from other swordsmen. At this moment, the magma below suddenly boiled violently, and the red light and black gas on Yi Xian's body suddenly entered Yi Xian's body. Bang! In an instant, The magma around Yi Xian vanished completely, and Yi Xian's body started to squirm. The old man spoke softly from above. As long as he can endure it, his physical body will undergo an earth-shattering transformation. The middle-aged man looked at Yi Xian with a trace of envy in his eyes. His bloodline has been reversed by the humanoid king's blood. This fellow is really lucky. The old man spoke softly. How much he can absorb will depend on his own fortune. At this moment, there was a sudden change below, and the blood in Yi Xian's body suddenly trembled violently. Bang! A red light suddenly shot out from Yi Xian's body towards the sky. In an instant, that red light rushed into the horizon, and the entire horizon was instantly dyed blood red. The old man's face was filled with disbelief. How can this humanoid king's blood be finished? Is this bad? Yesterday's monthly votes were exceptionally few, and I couldn't help but sink into contemplation. Why is it like this? Is it because I'm handsome? The only sword. Chapter 677. Below him, Yi Xian's entire body started to tremble madly as if he was having an epileptic fit. It was extremely shocking. Moreover, the blood within his body seemed to have been stimulated by something, and it flowed madly within his body. At the same time, strands of powerful bloodline energy ceaselessly stimulated his body. The old man's expression was extremely gloomy. There's something wrong with his bloodline. Bloodline. Below him, Yi Xian's entire face started to warp. At this moment, he still had a bit of consciousness, and he felt extremely bitter in his heart. He didn't dare to rashly activate this bloodline energy because he wasn't confident in his ability to control it. But now, the bloodline energy that he'd absorbed earlier had actually tried to change his bloodline, and it had undoubtedly touched the reverse scale of his bloodline. Thus, it had erupted. He was able to sense that his bloodline was getting angry. Yi Xian was speechless to the extreme as well. A bloodline that had even become sentient. Are you trying to kill me? As he sensed that the bloodline energy was becoming more and more frenzied, Yi Xian hurriedly looked at the old man. Help me suppress my bloodline. The old man immediately jumped down and pressed his hand on Yi Xian's shoulder, and a powerful force instantly pressed down upon Yi Xian's body. Yi Xian hurriedly cooperated, and he utilized the profound energy within his body to start suppressing his bloodline. Just like that, after around 2 hours, the bloodline within Yi Xian's body gradually calmed down. The old man heaved a sigh of relief when he saw this scene. He wasn't afraid that Yi Xian's bloodline energy would harm Yi Xian, but he was afraid that Yi Xian's bloodline energy would affect Yi Xian, because he'd sensed that Yi Xian's mind wasn't normal. Moreover, Yi Xian's body was emanating dense killing intent. He knew that if he didn't suppress Yi Xian's bloodline energy, then Yi Xian might go berserk. Once Yi Xian went berserk, he wasn't fully confident in his ability to suppress it. After all, Yi Xian had quite a few extraordinary treasures in his possession, especially the World Prison Pagoda. He was extremely fearful of it. Fortunately, Yi Xian had regained his composure. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly opened his eyes, and they were completely blood red. The old man's expression changed when he witnessed this scene, and he became vigilant. But soon, Yi Xian's eyes returned to normal. Yi Xian stood up. As soon as he stood up, a powerful aura suddenly swept out from his body, causing the surrounding space to tremble. Yi Xian was stunned. Then he looked at his own body. After a while he said excitedly, "Divine Realm! Divine Realm!" His body had advanced from the Emperor Realm to the God Realm. Yi Xian clenched his right hand. In an instant, a powerful force gathered on his right arm. Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. His current physical defense and strength were not just a little bit stronger than before. Now, he was completely confident that he could kill a deity realm expert with a single punch. Power. Yi Xian gazed at the middle-aged man who stood nearby. The middle-aged man spoke indifferently. "What? You want to fight me?" Yi Xian chuckled. "How about we spar?" He wanted to test exactly how strong his body was right now. The middle-aged man gazed at Yi Xian. "All right, but you're not allowed to use your sword." Earlier when he fought Yi Xian had used his fists and sword at the same time, and it was too annoying. Moreover, if Yi Xian were to use the executing heaven sword, then it would be even more impossible for him to fight. Yi Xian roared with laughter. All right, we'll fight him with our fists. The middle-aged man nodded, and then he and Yi Xian arrived at an arena, and the arena was in a mess. The middle-aged man gazed at Yi Xian. Just make do with it. Yi Xian nodded. I'm making a move. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly charged forward. Bang! The space in the surroundings trembled violently. On the other hand, the middle-aged man vanished as well, and he smashed his fist towards Yi Xian. Bang! Bang! It didn't take long for numerous explosions to resound. Yi Xian didn't utilize his sword this time, so he could be said to be on par with the middle-aged man. Of course, when Yi Xian utilized the Fist of Burial, he would gain an even greater advantage. After his body attained the God-rank realm, the might of his Fist of Burial had increased by at least a few times. If he didn't utilize the Fist of Burial, then he would be on par with the middle-aged man. Just like that, the two of them fought for an entire hour, and they were equally matched in the end. After Yi Xian stopped, he walked over to the old man and cupped his fists. Thank you. The old man glanced at Yi Xian, and then he said, there might be a huge movement in the Northern Territory soon. Yi Xian spoke in a low voice. A huge movement? The old man nodded. They've failed numerous times, and the Northern Territory won't allow themselves to fail again this time. Because this is their last chance. If they can't defeat all of you, then other powers will come to your chaotic universe. When he spoke up to this point, he gazed at Yi Xian. Don't underestimate the Northern Territory, especially the king of the Northern Territory. He was said to be the most monstrous genius in the history of the Northern Territory, and no one knows exactly how strong he is now. The king of the Northern Territory. Yi Xian nodded. Thank you for the reminder, senior. The old man nodded slightly. Let's go. Yi Xian cupped his fists once more. Senior, until we meet again. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and flew off on his sword, and he vanished into the horizon in the blink of an eye. The middle-aged man by the old man's side suddenly spoke softly. Can he stop the king of the Northern Territory? The old man spoke indifferently. It'll depend on his own fortune. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. But it didn't take long for him to stop and turn around to look towards the distance. Not far away on the city wall stood a middle-aged man in a white robe. The middle-aged man gazed at the old man and grinned. You're from the Taoist sect, right? The old man glanced at the white-robed man. Fuck off. As soon as he finished speaking, he waved his right hand. Boom. Not far away, the white-robed man was sent flying thousands of feet away. At this moment, a man in black suddenly appeared behind the white-robed man. The man in black was about to make a move, but was stopped by the white-robed man. From afar, the old man's voice suddenly came. Within 3 breaths, if you're still in the city, you'll die. The white-robed man did not hesitate. Let's go. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and disappeared into the horizon. In the distance, the old man spoke softly. That little guy is in danger. That's not right either. At the end of the horizon, the white-robed man stopped. He looked at the distant Thousand Opportunity City, his eyes extremely solemn. Beside him, a man in black suddenly said, This Taoist sect's people are really arrogant. The white-robed man said indifferently, They have the strength, but what makes this sovereign curious is, why do they let that Yi Xian leave the city safely? As he said this, he turned around. Have you arranged it? The man in black nodded. Yes, it's arranged. The white-robed man nodded. Let's go. With that, he turned around and left. After leaving Thousand Opportunity City, Yi Xian headed straight for the chaotic universe. The old man's words gave him a bad feeling. The black-yellow Great World's northern region must be up to something big. He had to rush back to the chaotic universe as soon as possible. Not long after, Yi Xian suddenly stopped. He frowned slightly, and the surroundings were silent. After a moment of silence, Yi Xian suddenly drew his sword and slashed to the side. Chi! The sword light slashed down, and space was directly torn apart. At this moment, the scene in the middle of the battlefield suddenly distorted. Yi Xian was expressionless. The space doctrine suddenly appeared between his eyebrows. The next second, the distorted space around him gradually calmed down. At the moment, there were 4 men in black standing around him. Their figures were erratic and unpredictable, like ghosts and spirits. Yi Xian said indifferently, Northern region? The 4 did not speak. Suddenly, the four of them disappeared, and the space around Yi Xian was suddenly cut apart layer by layer. Yi Xian did not waste any time and smashed his fist down. Burial fist. As this fist smashed down, the surrounding space directly collapsed. On the other hand, the four men who had just approached Yi Xian were instantly blasted away. At the instant that they were blasted away, four flying swords suddenly flew out and slashed at the four men in black. Meanwhile, the four men in black suddenly vanished. Yi Xian frowned slightly. He glanced at the surroundings, and then he circulated the space Dao Law. In an instant, the space around him trembled violently, and then four figures appeared around him. Yi Xian turned around and swung his sword. Chi! The head of one of the men in black flew into the air. Yi Xian turned around to look at the three men in black, and they immediately retreated explosively. Yi Xian's face was expressionless. Such weaklings? Who are you looking down on? As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly charged forward. OM! A sword howl tore through the sky. Chi! In the distance, space was directly torn apart by Yi Xian's sword. At the same time, the head of one of the men in black flew into the air, and blood sprayed out like a fountain. There were only two black-clothed men left. They were about to attack when a voice suddenly resounded from not too far away. There's no need for that. All of you aren't a match for him. Yi Xian looked over and saw a white-robed man walking over from afar. Yi Xian gazed at the white-robed man, and the latter grinned. You're Yi Xian? Yi Xian suddenly vanished, and then he slashed down with a raise of his sword. The white-robed man's eyes narrowed slightly, and then he flicked his sleeve. Bang! The white-robed man retreated by a few meters while Yi Xian returned to where he stood earlier. At this moment, there was a deep and bloody mark on the white-robed man's right hand. The white-robed man's face instantly sank. He gazed at Yi Xian and was about to speak when Yi Xian suddenly vanished. OM! A sword howl reverberated through the sky. In the distance, the white-robed man's eyes narrowed slightly, and then he suddenly took a step forward and smashed his fist forward. This punch smashed directly onto Yi Xian's sword light. Rumble! The sword light shattered, and then Yi Xian was instantly pushed over 100 m back. On the other hand, another deep and bloody mark had appeared on the white-robed man's right hand, and his bones were visible. The white-robed man's face was extremely gloomy, and there was a trace of vigilance in his eyes as he gazed at the sword in Yi Xian's hand. Your sword! He'd just spoken up to hear when Yi Xian suddenly vanished, and then a ray of light flashed. The white-robed man crossed his arms and used them to block Yi Xian's sword. Bang! The white-robed man was instantly pushed over 100 m back by Yi Xian's sword, and when he stopped moving, the heads of two black-clothed men in front of him had flown into the air. The white-robed man gazed at Yi Xian. Yi! He'd just spoken a single word when Yi Xian suddenly vanished again. The white-robed man's face instantly warped when he witnessed this scene. Can you let me finish? Sword strike. Bang! The white-robed man was blasted flying again. The only sword. Chapter 678. Yi Xian did not stop this time. He slashed at the white-robed man fiercely. He held the executing heaven sword in his hand. Therefore, the white-robed man did not dare to fight head-on like before. Because of this, the white-robed man retreated again and again. In the end, he retreated tens of thousands of feet. Flying swords flew around Yi Xian and the white-robed man. At this moment, the white-robed man suddenly squatted down and put his hands together. In the next moment, he suddenly jerked forward. Rumble! The surrounding space trembled. Yi Xian was directly thrown hundreds of feet away. The white-robed man stared at Yi Xian. At this moment, his expression was incomparably ferocious. I really underestimated you. I never thought that your physical body would actually... Yi Xian suddenly disappeared. Chi! A sword arrived. Boom! The white-robed man was instantly slashed and there was another deep wound on his body. The white-robed man looked up at Yi Xian. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly appeared in front of him and slashed again. This time, it was not the executing heaven sword but the soul-suppressing sword. This sword slash, the white-robed man could not dodge at all. He could only take it head-on. He crossed his arms. Boom! The white-robed man instantly retreated hundreds of feet away. As soon as he stopped, His expression changed drastically. This was because the soul in his body was actually being torn apart. Soul tearing. The white-robed man looked at Yi Xian in horror. "What are you?" At this point, his voice stopped abruptly. This was because Yi Xian appeared in front of him again. Yi Xian slashed down again. At this moment, the soul-suppressing sword in his hand had become the executing heaven sword. This sword slash caused the white-robed man's expression to change drastically. He was just about to attack when at this moment, the soul in his body was being torn apart. It was impossible to achieve divine soul unity. At this moment, Yi Xian's sword had already slashed down. Chi! The white-robed man's body was directly cut in half by Yi Xian's sword. The white-robed man's soul was about to escape, but a mysterious force indeed locked him in place. The white-robed man glared at Yi Xian. "You!" Yi Xian directly pressed his sword against the white-robed man's soul. The white-robed man was greatly shocked because he discovered that his soul was actually starting to dissipate. Yi Xian looked at the white-robed man. Many people die because they talk too much. The white-robed man stared at Yi Xian without saying a word. Yi Xian said, "I ask you answer. If you answer well, I can let you live." The white-robed man looked at Yi Xian and sneered, "You underestimate this sovereign too much." "This sovereign?" Yi Xian suddenly said, "All right, I respect you. I won't ask any more." As soon as he finished speaking, he raised his hand and slashed with his sword. Chi! The white-robed man's soul was directly absorbed by soul. Yi Xian took the white-robed man's storage ring and left. But before he could take a few steps, a cold light suddenly slashed at the back of his neck. This cold light appeared without warning, and Yi Xian did not even have time to react. Chi! The cold light had just penetrated half an inch into Yi Xian's skin when Yi Xian's entire body disappeared on the spot. When he reappeared, he was already hundreds of feet away, and the back of his neck was bleeding profusely. Yi Xian looked not far away, and it was already empty. But he knew who it was. It was the female assassin who had once tried to assassinate him. The Heavenly Gates assassin. Yi Xian closed his eyes slightly, and the space Dao Law appeared between his brows. Soon, the space within a radius of hundreds of thousands of feet suddenly trembled. A moment later, Yi Xian opened his eyes, and the surrounding space returned to normal. The female assassin had already left. If her attack failed, she would escape thousands of miles away. This was what an assassin was like. After a moment of silence, Yi Xian turned around and left. Not long after Yi Xian left, a woman in black suddenly appeared where he had been standing. This person was the Heavenly Gates assassin who had previously attacked Yi Xian. The woman was silent for a moment, and just as she was about to disappear, a sword light suddenly appeared behind her. The woman's expression changed, and she turned around to slash down with her saber. Boom! The woman instantly retreated hundreds of feet. The moment she retreated, she wanted to hide. At this moment, the space around her began to shrink layer by layer, and finally formed a spatial cage. This spatial cage directly trapped the woman. At this moment, Yi Xian appeared in front of the woman. He glanced at her and said, "I know how to hide as well." The woman suddenly made a move, and Yi Xian blocked it with his sword. Bang! The saber in the woman's hand directly shattered, and at the same time, Yi Xian's sword directly pressed against the woman's brows. Yi Xian looked at the woman. "Do you want to live?" The woman was silent. Yi Xian held his sword and gently pushed it forward. The sword penetrated half an inch, and in an instant, blood gushed out of the woman's brows like a fountain. Yi Xian looked at the woman expressionlessly. "Seeing that you're a woman, I'll ask again. Do you want to live?" The woman was silent. Just as Yi Xian was about to stab his sword in, the woman suddenly said, "Yes." Yi Xian was slightly startled. He didn't expect the woman to answer like that. He sheathed his sword and said, "Do you know what to do?" The woman looked at Yi Xian. "I don't know." Yi Xian said, "Follow me." The woman was silent. Yi Xian said, "Hand over a wisp of your soul." The woman was still silent. Yi Xian's expression gradually turned cold. "This is your last chance." The woman opened her palm, and a wisp of her soul flew in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian collected the woman's soul, and then looked at the woman. "Apart from you, is there anyone else in the Heavenly Gate?" The woman nodded. Yes. Yi Xian asked, how many? The woman shook her head. I don't know. Yi Xian frowned slightly. The woman said again, I don't know. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, does the heavenly gate also want that treasure? The woman nodded. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, besides the heavenly gate, what else do you know? About me. The woman was silent for a moment and then said, the Sword Martial School is investigating you. The Sword Martial School. Yi Xian thought of the white-robed woman from before. That white-robed woman was the founder of the Sword Martial School. Did she also want that treasure? After a moment of silence, Yi Xian said, follow me. Don't show yourself. As his voice fell, he disappeared into thin air. The woman was silent for a long time, and then also disappeared. An hour later, Yi Xian returned to the chaotic universe. Inside the divine palace, Yi Xian sat quietly, and in front of him was Shangguan Xian. Yi Xian asked, how is the matter in the vast universe handled? Shangguan Xian said, it has been handled. There are many sects and powerhouses over there, and we have recruited them. Yi Xian nodded, if they don't want to come, don't force them. Shangguan Xian said, understood. As she said, she looked at Yi Xian, have you become stronger again? Yi Xian nodded, my physical body has broken through. Shangguan Xian smiled slightly, congratulations. Yi Xian said softly, tell our people to prepare, they should be making a big move. Shangguan Xian hesitated, and then nodded, turned around, and left. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly said, take me to see the people of the Dao Execution Army. Shangguan Xian looked at Yi Xian, you want to transfer them? Yi Xian nodded. Shangguan Xian nodded. Okay. Yi Xian and Shangguan Xian left the main hall, and under Shangguan Xian's lead, the two entered the vast starry sky. In the starry sky, Yi Xian said softly, they are not in the chaotic universe? Shangguan Xian shook her head. No. Yi Xian nodded, and he looked up into the depths of the starry sky. He had a bad feeling. The black-yellow Great World's northern region had failed so many times, and this time, the other side would not hold back. In the past, it could be said that they underestimated the enemy, but now, if the other side still underestimated the enemy, then they were really stupid. And he did not believe that the king of the northern region was a fool. Not long after, Yi Xian and Shangguan Xian came to a continent. There were very few people on this continent, and the spiritual qi was quite thin. Shangguan Xian brought Yi Xian to an ancient city. Inside the ancient city, the two came to a restaurant, and next to the door of the restaurant, a man was lying. The man reeked of alcohol, and his clothes were tattered. Yi Xian looked at Shangguan Xian and the latter walked in front of the man and said softly, Yan. There was no response, and the man was still sleeping. Shangguan Xian looked at Yi Xian, and Yi Xian suddenly drew his sword and slashed. Chi! A ray of sword light slashed straight at the man. At this moment, the man's eyes suddenly opened, and then he punched at Yi Xian's sword light. Bang! This punch forcibly blocked Yi Xian's sword light. The man looked at Yi Xian. You are that Yi Xian? Shangguan Xian said solemnly. Yan, he is now the king of my god nation. The man named Yan sneered. King of god nation? Is he worthy? Hearing this, Shangguan Xian frowned. Yan, how can you be so rude to a god master? Yan was expressionless. What god master is he? I only recognize God Master Wu and Little Seven. Shangguan Xian wanted to say something, but at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly said, there is no need to say anything. Shangguan Xian looked at Yi Xian, and Yi Xian said, these members of the Dao Execution Army have their identities recorded in my god nation, right? Shangguan Xian nodded. Yes. Yi Xian pointed at Yan, who was not far away. From this moment on, delete him from the records. Shangguan Xian was stunned. Yan looked at Yi Xian, and his eyes narrowed slightly. At this moment, Shangguan Xian looked at Yi Xian. Godmaster, this may be a bit inappropriate. Yi Xian looked at Shangguan Xian. Are you the Godmaster or am I the Godmaster? Hearing this, Shangguan Xian's face suddenly changed. She knew that the person in front of her was angry. Thinking of Nan Gongwan's fate, Shangguan Xian quickly bowed respectfully. This subordinate knows her mistake. Yi Xian was expressionless. Immediately delete his record. After saying that, he turned around and left. At this moment, Na Yan suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian looked at Yan and didn't say anything. Yan stared at Yi Xian and laughed. Expel me from the Dao execution army? Are you joking? When I followed Martial God Master to slaughter Tendo, at that time, your parents weren't even born yet. You. Yi Xian suddenly disappeared. Yan's face suddenly changed, and he punched out. Yi Xian slashed down with his sword. Chi. The sword fell, and Yan's entire arm flew out. Blood spurted out. Na Yan was stunned. He didn't expect Yi Xian's strength to be so strong. The members of the Dao execution army were indeed strong, but no matter how strong they couldn't be stronger than Yi Xian and Xueqi. Yan stared at Yi Xian. If you dare to touch me, you. Yi Xian suddenly disappeared. Chi. A sword directly pierced Yan's forehead. Blood sprayed. Yan's eyes opened wide, and they were filled with disbelief. Xueqi nodded slightly, and her hands were trembling. Meanwhile, Yi Xian sheathed his sword, turned around, and left. Yan suddenly roared. They will take revenge for me. You. A strand of sword light flashed. Hiss. Yan's head flew into the air. At the same time, Yi Xian's voice resounded from afar. Notify everyone in the Dao execution army that anyone who doesn't listen to me, Yi Xian, will be expelled from the Dao execution army. If everyone doesn't listen, then immediately disband the Dao execution army. If they don't obey, then they can come look for me at any time. Tell them that I'll kill as many as they come. I heard that the live stream industry is doing well recently. I want to give it a try. Perhaps I'll become a great streamer with an annual salary of tens of millions. At the same time, I want to prove to all of you that I can actually rely on my looks to make a living. The only sword. Chapter 679. Angry. Xueqi looked at Na Yan's head in silence. She knew that Yi Xian was really angry. She rarely saw Yi Xian angry. This could be said to be the first time. This time, it also allowed her to understand her position and identity. She was Yi Xian's advisor. If she publicly questioned Yi Xian or disobeyed Yi Xian, it would have a significant impact on Yi Xian's prestige. Of course, it was mostly on herself. She would never forget Nan Gongwan's fate. After a while, Xueqi turned around and left. After the two returned to the divine nation, Xueqi took out a black ancient book. On the ancient book, there were two blood-red words. Dao execution. Xueqi opened the ancient book. This ancient book recorded the members of the Dao execution army. Looking at the names, Xueqi sighed softly. She knew that these people would definitely not be loyal to Yi Xian. Because Yi Xian's position as Divine Lord was a little abnormal. After all, Xueqi did not personally convene the assembly to pass on the position. Moreover, Xueqi's disappearance was somewhat inexplicable. It could be said that many people in the divine nation had doubts about Yi Xian's position as Divine Lord. But she knew that without Yi Xian's suppression, without Xueqi, the chaotic universe could not resist the black-yellow great world. Although the people in the divine nation did not dare to resist Yi Xian, the Dao execution army would definitely not submit to Yi Xian. And if the Dao execution army did not submit, Yi Xian would definitely use iron blood methods to suppress them. After a while, Xueqi sighed softly and turned around to leave. In the divine palace, Yi Xian sat cross-legged on the ground, the executing heaven sword quietly floating beside him. After a long time, he suddenly took out a Dao-ranked sword and began to absorb it. Now, he would absorb swords whenever he had time. In terms of realm, he still needed to hurry up and reach the Emperor realm as soon as possible. Only by reaching the Emperor realm would there be a qualitative transformation. Right at this moment, Yi Ling suddenly ran in. In the entire divine hall, only Yi Ling, Anlanxiu, and the others could enter without being notified. Yi Ling quickly walked up to Yi Xian and said with excitement, "Brother, I've accepted some disciples today, and they're all pretty good." Yi Xian looked at Yi Ling and said with a smile, "Not bad. Train him well." Yi Ling nodded. "Big brother, I want to properly manage the Immortal Dao sect. I wanted to become a very, very large sect in the Chaosverse. Yi Xian smiled and said, I will support you unconditionally. If you want money, look for me. If you want people, look for me. Anyway, if you need anything, look for me. Understand? Yiling smiled sweetly. I know. At this point, she spread out her hands. Brother, I want some divine crystals. I'm short on money. Yi Xian laughed, and then he took out a spatial ring and gave it to Yiling. Yiling glanced at the spatial ring, and there were 2 billion divine crystals in it. Yiling hurriedly said, Big brother, it's too much. Yi Xian shook his head. Take it. If it's not enough, look for me. As he spoke, he hesitated for a moment, and then he took out another spatial ring and gave it to Yiling. There are some Dao realm treasures in here. Take them and put them in the immortal Dao sect. As a large sect, it can't be lacking in necessary treasures. Yiling thought for a moment, and then she nodded. She put the spatial ring away and looked at Yi Xian. Big brother. Yi Xian smiled and said, What's wrong? Yiling hesitated for a moment, and then she said, I heard that the profoundness world. Yi Xian stood up and rubbed Yiling's little head lightly, and then he said, Don't think about all that. Big brother is here. Big brother will take care of everything, understand? Yiling looked at Yi Xian while she clenched her little fists tightly. Big brother, I'm very good at fighting as well. Yi Xian roared with laughter. All right, I'll definitely bring you along when we fight. Yiling looked Yi Xian in the eye. Definitely. Yi Xian said seriously. Definitely. Yiling smiled brilliantly, and then she turned around and left. As he gazed at Yiling's figure in the distance, Yi Xian's brows gradually furrowed. The profoundness world. After a moment of silence, Yi Xian was about to leave. Meanwhile, a woman walked in. It was Zhang Jiu. She had been managing the sword sect and Wu Yuan in Divine Martial City. She was once a palace lord and a marshal, so she was very good at management. Zhang Jiu walked over to Yi Xian, and she sized up Yi Xian. How strong are you? Yi Xian smiled. Very strong. Zhang Jiu shook her head. I can't catch up to you. Yi Xian said softly. I was forced to. He was forced out. Since Qingqing until now, his enemies had basically never stopped. Wherever he went, there would be new and powerful enemies. And now, there was the profoundness world. And it wasn't just the Xuanhuan world. There might be even more powerful people. They were endless. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. At this moment, Zhang Jiu said, Why did you call me here? Yi Xian recollected his thoughts and said seriously, You should know that I am the divine nation's divine lord. I don't have a trusted follower by my side, so I asked for your help. Zhang Jiu frowned. Don't you have that Shangguan Xian? Yi Xian shook his head. She's not bad, but her heart isn't completely on my side. Zhang Jiu nodded slightly. I understand. As she said this, she looked at Yi Xian. What position do you want? Yi Xian smiled. What position do you want? Zhang Jiu shook her head. You give it to me. Yi Xian nodded. From now on you can represent me completely. As he said this, he took out a token and gave it to Zhang Jiu. This is the Divine Lord token. Seeing it is the same as seeing the person. Zhang Jiu said solemnly, What if someone isn't satisfied? Yi Xian suddenly said, Come out. As soon as he said this, a black-clothed woman appeared not far behind Zhang Jiu. Yi Xian said, She is under your command now. Not only that, but you can also mobilize the dark guards. Zhang Jiu glanced at Yi Xian and nodded. I understand. As she said this, she turned and left. When she walked out of the door, she saw Shangguan Xian. Seeing Zhang Jiu, Shangguan Xian was slightly taken aback. You are? Zhang Jiu smiled. Zhang Jiu. From now on, I will be by his side and be responsible for some of his matters. Please give me some pointers in the future. Hearing this, Shangguan Xian's expression stiffened slightly, but she quickly recovered. She nodded. Welcome, Miss Zhang. Zhang Jiu nodded. I still have things to do. Let's talk later. As she said this, she walked out. Shangguan Xian was silent for a moment, and then she walked into the hall. She walked in front of Yi Xian and bowed slightly. I have informed all the members of the Dao Execution Army, but no one responded. They might, Yi Xian said softly, have Yan Dao and Zhen Guandao, as well as Xiang Yu, be ready to listen to my orders at any time. Shangguan Xian smiled bitterly. Do we really have to go this far? As she said this, she lowered her head slightly. I have no other intentions, nor am I siding with them. It's just that this army was created by the War God Lord. These people have made great contributions to the Divine Kingdom. Yi Xian looked at Shangguan Xian. These people are no longer under our control. I don't care who they are loyal to. I am now the ruler of the Divine Kingdom. Since they are not loyal to me, I naturally have the right to expel them from the Divine Kingdom. Speaking up to here, he got up and walked in front of Shangguan Xian. These people think that they are the most elite warriors of the Divine Kingdom, so they are arrogant and do not put me in their eyes. Since that is the case, why should I respect them? As he said this, he walked to the entrance of the hall and said softly, I don't want to be the ruler of the Divine Kingdom, but since Little Seven wants me to be the ruler, then I will be the ruler. I will also lead everyone in the chaotic universe to fight against the chaotic universe. Since I have chosen to be the ruler, then I will not allow anyone in the chaotic universe to challenge my authority. Whoever dares to challenge me will die. Yi Xian didn't want to be the ruler of the chaotic universe, but he understood one thing very well. In front of a great enemy, there could be no internal strife. If there was, then it must be eliminated immediately. Moreover, no one could challenge his authority, otherwise he would not be able to convince the people of the world. Behind Yi Xian, Shangguan Xian glanced at him and didn't say anything. She was a smart person and knew what Yi Xian was thinking. After a moment of silence, Shangguan Xian said softly, I saw the 9th young lady just now. Yi Xian nodded. I asked her to come and help me. Shangguan Xian lowered her head slightly. Do you need me to leave? Yi Xian shook his head. No need. You continue to do what you are doing, but in the future, she will be the leader. Her words are my words. Shangguan Xian nodded. Understood. She knew that her position had changed from the first to the second. However, this was already the best result. As long as she didn't completely lose this position, the Shangguan family wouldn't decline because she was still by Yi Xian's side and was still in the inner circle of power. It was just that this power might become less and less in the future. At this time, Yi Xian suddenly said, Miss Shangguan, during this time, you have helped me a lot, but you may not be so clear about your own position, so I need someone of my own to help me. Of course, you can rest assured that you are still you. You are still the same as before, but I hope you understand one thing, and this is also the last time I will tell you. In the future, my orders cannot be disobeyed, especially in front of others. Do you understand? Shangguan Xian nodded slightly. I understand. Yi Xian nodded. You may leave. Shangguan Xian bowed slightly, turned around, and left. Yi Xian sat cross-legged on the ground. He took out a Dao realm sword and was about to devour it, but at this moment, a powerful aura suddenly came from the sky outside the palace. An enemy attack? Yi Xian frowned slightly. In the next moment, he was already outside the palace. Above the palace, a man fell straight down. The man carried an extremely powerful force. At this moment, Yan Dao suddenly appeared in front of the man and pulled out his saber. Boom! The man was forced to stop. At this moment, 12 people appeared behind the man. These 12 people were all at the peak of the god state, and their auras were extremely powerful. Yan Dao looked at the man and the others and frowned slightly. You are? The man in the lead sneered. What? You don't even recognize our Dao Execution Army? Dao Execution Army. Hearing this, Yan Dao's face sank. At this moment, the man suddenly looked at Yi Xian and pointed at Yi Xian angrily. This person killed my Dao Execution Army. How can he be the God Lord? He deserves to die. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.